OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
It's 7:30 this Tuesday morning. You're very welcome along. We'd love to hear from you this morning. 0879 180 180. It's Ger Eoin, Owen Sheehan with you all the way through until 10. Owen, how are you?
Good now, Ger. How are you?
I think everybody's recovered from the excesses of the weekend. It's a Tuesday. We're all feeling good about life, right?
Yeah, the detox, the emotional detox has begun.
I wasn't sitting on the couch last night going, geez, you missed the football the same, wouldn't you?
I wouldn't go that far. I think that
You'd had enough?
I've had enough. I think the 2014 tournament is actually perfect. I do think that there is more fatigue, obviously, with the World Cup. I think the length of that tournament, the number of days off, absolutely spot on. Just leaves you wanting a little bit more, and that's the way you want to leave any tournament.
I'm not saying I'm ready for the Premier League. Don't get me wrong. I am absolutely not ready for the Premier League.
Pre-season starts today. Hibs against Arsenal.
I can't wait for the forced jollity around a Steve Dyche press conference. And everybody knocking 2 days out of, geez, he's a funny man, isn't it? It's great to have such characters still in the game, not your identical.
Steve Dyche.
Did I?
I
there you
can't
go. Yeah,
enough.
Steve. He was at the team hotel hanging out.
Was he?
Our Steve. Apparently, yeah.
See, God.
Himself and a few others that were kind of random enough. It's like, what? Maybe there's a connection to somebody along the way. Maybe he's part of the future. He's the Brains Trust. They did play a bit like an old Steve Dyche team, didn't they?
But I was going to say, I mean, Sean Dyche should be the man who heads up the security operation for this 2030 World Cup. He is the man who can defend us, I'm using that phrase, us, from the poisonous influences that might destroy our World Cup.
Would anybody get in if Sean Dyche was on the turnstile? The
tourism rates to the UK and Ireland would nosedive dramatically because Sean Dyche would be in full armour.
Ask Flair Man's Flair would have immediately have just gone and been out. Burberry Shirt Man would have been like, oh, Mr. Dyche, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to punch that child.
Like, it is going to be interesting how England get out and try and salvage their reputation over the next little while about like how they try and get this World Cup bid back on track, because while it seems like a relatively significant thing from our perspective, this is a massive deal for Boris Johnson and for the UK government to actually have this moment of football returning in World Cup guise to England in 2030. Ireland have very much been dragged into this in order to make the bid a little bit more palatable before what happened at the weekend, I suspect. Like, this is a huge deal for them. We are very much the cousins who've been called up to try and make it look good rather than the ones who are actually leading this. Like, and it is going to be interesting to see how they actually do try and salvage the reputation. Like, maybe, as you say, Flair Man comes out and releases a statement. It's like I did not have sexual relations with that Flair or something like that, and everything is fine once again, and everybody moves on with their life. UEFA are like, fair enough. FIFA are like, fair enough, and we get on with, like, maybe Burberry Shirt Man could be categorised as Welsh or something like that, and they could just say, listen, they crossed the border from Wales, they invaded our city, how about we just cut Cardiff out of this bid and maybe give an extra game to Dublin or Cork or something like that, and away we go. You're
going to have, your mentions are already aflame, Owen, as a result of that. So Andrea Mancini, who is Roberto Mancini's son, was forced to sit on the concrete to watch the game because his seat had been stolen by somebody who had managed to surge through. The details are actually getting pretty grim in terms of what did happen. And it wasn't just people being forced to move from their seats. It was like violence being meted out, a serious sexual assault, a knife was pulled, various pretty horrific things happening. Oh, no thanks, Siri.
Your phone, Google Assistant has been ready to listen to OTB AM this morning.
Yeah, so if you want your smart speaker, you just say, hey, Google, please play OTB Sports Radio on TuneIn, and there you go. That's gonna cause us no end of problems. Yeah, so look, do we feel very comfortable about being part of this bid? Do we think it's a really good use of our international political power and taxpayers' money to join up with the crowd who couldn't control their own crowd at a home game, at a stadium that's a football stadium that's kind of perfect for policing? That's like has been specifically designed with large crowds in mind and didn't even have a full capacity crowd. Do we want to be a part of that? Is that what we want?
I think on a practical level, it's probably going to cost a lot of money to even get to the next stage of putting this bid together. And Ireland probably need to weigh up whether or not it's worth it, given this thing is maybe doomed to fail after what happened at the weekend. Because it kind of is, really. There is, on a serious level, there is actually no salvaging the image after some of the stuff that you've mentioned there, and also just some of the stuff that everybody has seen on social media over the course of the last couple of days. There is a very easy way to lose this on a PR level from FIFA's perspective. But then again, like, have they ever been afraid of what people think about them when it comes to awarding World Cups?
No.
Never been afraid of that.
So it's us versus Spain and Portugal. I'd much rather go to Spain and Portugal.
There was like a Balkan bid that was doing the rounds as well. I'm not sure when do we get to the stage where those UEFA bids are going to have to become finalised. But there was definitely another one in there, and there was like one involving Greece as well, and a couple of other countries in that location. So there's maybe a little bit more to this than just England getting their act together and putting up a good front. There are good, legitimate other candidates, and the Spain-Portugal World Cup would be pretty good. So
it'd be sensational. The FA have said, just some of the quotes from it, they defended the level of stewarding and security in place at the match, saying it exceeded the requirements for the match. It was greater than any other previous event at Wembley Stadium. This was the first time, as we all know, in how long was it? It's been quite a while, I think, since there had been a game of this magnitude on English soil and at Wembley Stadium involving England. And so, therefore, loads more people showed up in the aftermath of a pandemic as well. The behaviour of the people who illegally forced their way into the stadium was unacceptable, dangerous, and showed total disregard for the safety and security protocols in place. I mean, yeah, they weren't that interested in security protocols, it turns out. No steward or security staff should be subjected to this type of behaviour, and we thank them for their support. And I haven't seen much from the police coming out, so this is obviously the FA pointing the finger at the police. We run a stadium, not a fortress. We've got a fantastic security team at the stadium, and they had never seen anything like it. And, you know, that security team obviously was supplemented by Burberry man trying to fight back the invading hordes. It's funny how quickly the little bit of power that he took, and him and his ilk. So, do we want to be part of this? I don't know.
There was some reports the other night that there was 200,000 people in the Wembley area. So you've got 60,000 of the, well, I should say 199,999, because obviously one of them had jumped sides and had gone to join the security forces instead. But still a ginormous number versus the 60,000 that actually had tickets. So they just were clearly completely underprepared for something. But there aren't too many sporting events in the world where there will be twice the number of people inside the stadium baying to get in outside, if those numbers are correct. Now, in fairness, there shouldn't have been the remainder of people actually trying to get into the stadium. I'm sure a lot of them had made their peace and had just tried to soak up the atmosphere. But it was, yeah, it's crazy, and like it is kind of hard to see how they turn this narrative around to say, actually, we can do a really good job at this event, because the decisions are going to have to be made in the next couple of years with regards to who hosts 2030.
We're going to speak with Michelle Owen, who's a sports broadcaster who was working at the game for ITV, who was there, and just her description of it is pretty horrific. She said that they were concerned at one point. There was a swarm of about 100 people broke one of the cordons and smashed down the gates that I just moved from. I saw a kid get knocked down by the stampede. We stood there for an hour and saw waves of fans doing the same. I began thinking that something terrible was happening, as if someone was approaching with a gun. I just wanted to get out of the way. So this is, you know, obviously the other aspect of this is like, you know, where were the police? Where was the look, it just seems really weird. They couldn't organise a football match. Football's coming home. We invented football, and they couldn't organise a football match. And now they want to say, oh, we can totally do a World Cup. Don't worry, it'll be absolutely fine. And the truth is, you can't. The truth is, you've like really, you had one chance and it didn't work. And I don't think that there should be a World Cup. And I'm not really sure that the Irish government should be investing any of our money in trying to be part of that. Because what does it actually help? How does it help football? I mean, up until this, you were like, actually, I can see the reason why you'd have a few games. It'd be nice. It'd be a real festival of football. But I don't know. Is the thuggish element who sometimes use football as a means of expression for their thuggishness. Is that going to somehow disappear in the next 9 years, and it won't be an aspect of this that we need to pay attention to? I don't know. Give us your thoughts. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Two other quick things that we need to talk about. Eric Lowndes is no longer part of the Dublin panel. That's according to Conor McKeown in the back of the Irish Independent and the Herald this morning. Just death by 1,000 cuts here. Owen, Kerry celebrating already, picking up Sam.
Mayo celebrating already, I would venture to say. I'm just kind of like looking through even like the half-back line that they started against Wexford. Obviously, that's where Eric Lowndes, I would have expected him to have actually started there this weekend, because you've got Robert McDade in there who's injured. You've got James McCarthy and Brian Howard in there as well. That you slot Eric Lowndes in there and it's still an absolutely unreal half-back line. But again, it's just one of these where you're like, that looks a little bit less awesome given Eric Lowndes won't be available to come off the bench, or the replacement for Eric Lowndes won't be available to come off the bench and are instead in the starting positions. There's no question that their defence has been decimated, in particular over the last little while, and that's from goalkeeper up, obviously. It's still a very strong squad, but there are a number of players in there now who are going to be untested going into the Championship. Sean McMahon, from people who've watched him a lot, are quite impressed by him. He's one of the new names, and obviously Peadar O'Cuffik-Byrne in midfield, who started against Wexford, is the other, not a newbie to the Dublin camp, but when it comes to Championship football, he is a bit of a newbie. So does that mean then that there could be essentially a third newbie thrown in there as well? Potentially, like it was Tom Lahiff who came on for McDade that day against Wexford, again, somebody who hasn't got full exposure to Championship football at, say, All-Ireland semi-final, final level on a consistent basis. So that's 3 and 4 of you include Comerford in your number 1 to 9, essentially, going forward over the next little while. They need the players who are injured back. Like the John Small injury, when it happened at the moment, you knew it was significant because he's been there for a while and he's at the age profile where he's ready to be one of Dublin's best defenders, if not their best defender. So they need him back. They need anyone they can possibly get back into that squad, because they're a little bit threadbare in that department at the moment.
Yeah. So you wouldn't have said Eric Lowndes was a key member of the starting 15, but this weekend he might have started, and certainly it's the strength and depth. Is it important in terms of how the rest of the country is thinking about the Dubs suddenly being weakened?
Eric Lowndes, yeah, it is. It all feeds into the same conversation, which is the strength of Dublin was almost in the fact that Eric Lowndes could come on for 3 minutes in injury time, and it's still kind of like, well, this guy, an unbelievable athlete, and he will make a bigger difference coming off the bench in that period of time than pretty much anybody that you will be able to bring off the bench. And the U goes for any opponent that Dublin would have come up against over the last little while. It's not necessarily the most headline of departures from the Dublin camp, but it's just kind of strange because
7 All-Irelands.
There you go. Seven, he's got 7 All-Ireland medals. You would have thought, at face value, that this would have been a great opportunity for Eric Lowndes this summer, with McDade's injury and with John Small's injury.
And he played in the league. It wasn't like this is somebody who hadn't featured at all in the management's thinking. Maybe, I don't know, it's hard to know. Maybe he wasn't named in the team this weekend and decided, right, well, if I'm not going to make it now, I'm never going to make it. Or maybe a work thing came up and it's like, well, I've already got 7 All-Ireland, so we don't get the retirement interviews at this time of year the way you normally do in the winter time when Mayo staggered it. That was one of the jokes that Andy Moore was making last week before this came out. It was like, oh, Dubs are pulling a bit of a Mayo here, day by day by day by day, somebody else goes. And it has been the complete reworking of the Dublin panel in the space of 12 months.
Yeah, it really has.
From the slightly shock announcement that Jim Gavin was going, from that point to this, you've essentially lost the bones of a full team.
I'd like to see the team that could line out of Dublin retirees over the last couple of years. Actually, it'll be one hell of a team. Lowndes will obviously go down as the guy who's best remembered for coming on to rapturous applause from the hill that day when everybody thought it was Diarmuid Connolly. But that was almost at the peak of the Jim Gavin era, and he was still getting significant game time at that moment. So I don't know, maybe he hasn't kicked on himself, and maybe Dessie Farrell had seen that in training, and as you say, the opportunities weren't going to be there for him, and he's walked away. We don't know how anybody's been going in training, and maybe we were overstating how much of an impact he would have had. But as you say, he got meaningful league game time this year, and you're not getting league game time this year unless you're in the proper championship plans. But there's no question that we will have either one of the most relentless sports organisations we've ever seen at the end of this year, or we will have a Dublin team that have lost their All-Ireland medals or that lost their All-Ireland title. Because if they manage to win it with this bunch, it will genuinely be a huge achievement. Yes, it is still on paper. I'm sure you can make the argument that it is still the strongest squad on paper, but to go through that level of flux over the course of the last little while and to still maintain your title in the way that Dublin tend to do it, I think would be massive for them. And I guess that's motivating them as well. They've got that factor. You can imagine how people like Brian Fenton and Kieran Kilkenny are feeling in the camp when they know that people outside the camp are talking about this as a potential weakness. They're like, screw you, we're the best team in Ireland. How many All-Ireland medals do we have again? And I think there will be an angrier version of Dublin, a greater siege mentality from Dublin this year than we've seen before, and it might work out for them. I would say the probability is that it will work out for them.
I don't know if the probability is. I think it's getting 50-50 at this stage that somebody's going to be able to have a go at them. The forward sell to the column tomorrow from Martin Brennan is, Meath have been handed a great opportunity. Are they brave enough to take it? Do they have the balls to beat them?
What's your gut instinct on that on a Tuesday morning? Like this feels like a big championship week. And
Meath beat Dublin. I don't think Meath can beat Dublin, but I think they can give them a proper game. Like
what does that mean? Like what does
I think that
numerically?
I think that means that Meath are within 3 points with 50 minutes on the clock, and they're within 6 points with 60 minutes on the clock, and that is progress for Leinster. But I think that actually it could be within 3 points with 60 minutes on the clock, and we're kind of looking around going, an old snaky goal now, wouldn't it be interesting? And if the weather forecast is sensational, so I don't think that it's going to be one of those dirty days that we all feel like we need if Dublin are going to get done in Leinster. And the whole notion of Dublin getting done in Leinster, by the way, I think we may have lost the run of ourselves until Conor McKeown has helpfully, in his third last paragraph, given us a list of the players. Since Jim Gavin's reign ended 18 months ago, Dublin have lost Bernard Brogan, Owen O'Gara, Darren Daly, Diarmuid Connolly, Michael Darragh Macaulay, Paddy Andrews, Cian O'Sullivan, Jack McCaffrey, Paul Mannion, Lowndes, Rory O'Carroll's not back, and Stephen Cluxton. That's 12 apostles with like 6 million All-Ireland medals. That 12-a-side team, at their peak, that 12-a-side team beats 29 counties full 15, I want to say, right now today.
Well, at their peak, obviously, they do.
And I'm only giving them 12 players. I'm not letting them have 3 subs. They can't pick you, me and Tommy, even.
I still think, though, that, I mean, you're looking at that bunch of players.
And Kevin McMahon was 13.
And, of course, there are a whole range of reasons why that list is important, other than what can that person do if they started this weekend against Meath? I accept that. But if you look at that list of players and think to yourself who would actually have been the starters this weekend, maybe if everybody was fit, if I give myself that caveat as well, then I think Cluxton and McCaffrey are still the two that are the really significant ones.
Mannion
wasn't starting last year, you know?
But he was in case of emergency break last.
Why wasn't he like, we need to ask this question, why wasn't he starting last year? Why wasn't Brian Howard starting the final? Like, there is...
Well, because not everybody was fully fit all the time.
Okay, so if they weren't injured, if they weren't fit, that's fine.
You know, and I'd say they probably came back late and their place was taken, and there's like you need to win your place back. And they didn't need them. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? It was like, we're going to win this game by 6 to 8 points if everybody just performs to a 7 out of 10. Do you actually think
that they thought that? That's
against
actually...
Mayo, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
That's a conversation that Desi Farrell says. He's like, we're going to have a 6 to 8 point cushion so I can afford to leave those players on the bench.
No,
do you really think that's how it went?
But no, obviously not. He didn't say that out loud to people. But the reality of the situation was that, yeah, we're so far ahead of these teams that I'm not going to grandfather somebody in who was late back because of injury or the fitness wasn't at the level that it was required to be at, and somebody else is like, so who are you going to drop? Are you dropping Paddy Small for the final just because Mannion has the reputation of being one of the best footballers in the country? No, that's not how you build the squad and you reward people for training the whole way through. But if it had been Kerry in 2019 in the All-Ireland final, would they have started Mannion in the final? What do you think?
Well, I don't know.
What do you think?
He did start that final after a brilliant year. I'm not.
So last year.
I'm not saying that he like that.
You know the question I'm asking.
You think that? So you think that he would have? This is an All-Ireland final. I don't think so. No, I think that surely Dublin approached that game on a mental level the exact same way they approached the Kerry game the previous year. It was an All-Ireland final. And surely they haven't got to the point where they're like they can start grading All-Ireland finals on importance or the opposition. Like I
think they felt pretty comfortable that they were going to win that game last year with the team that they had. That they didn't feel the need to suddenly pick players on past performance. It was like, what have you done for me in the last 3 months since we came back from COVID? That's what I think. And
but that's the correct way to do it, and that's what I'm saying. I'm like, I mean, if you're saying that Paul Mannion would have been a guaranteed starter this year, then why wasn't he a guaranteed starter last year? Why was that 3 months?
They didn't need him.
Like, why was that 3 months different to the 3 months this year? So I just basically think that of course, there's a lot of All-Ireland medals that have gone. At their peak, all those players have been excellent, but I still think you can limit it down to a number of players who, if everybody's fully fit, would actually make the starting 15 or would actually be guaranteed to play in an All-Ireland final.
I think Mannion's only 28, and I'm pretty certain that if he'd had a full campaign and played significant minutes in the league, that he would have been a starter for the rest of the season.
Yeah, like, but I agree with that, and I just think that there was enough of Mannion last year for him to play that final. And I just don't. I don't know what has been behind some of the team sheets or some of the team selections over the last little while, and I'm sure that we'll get more clarity on that as the summer develops. Like someone like Brian Howard has to be he's the potential to be Dublin's best player or one of their best players. Maybe I wouldn't go that far, but like himself and fencing in midfield has the potential. That has the potential where you open up the team sheet as an opponent, you're like, we're beaten in one department immediately when you look at those two fellas in midfield, and it just feels that we haven't seen that partnership develop post Jim Gavin. All
right, 7:51 this morning. If you want to get in touch, if you've got views on that, are we witnessing the end of the Dubs? 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. We're going to simulation, not a dive, but this is actually a simulation of what the season might look like with the new structures, the proposed Senior Football Championship. Plan A, Plan B, we'll explain them there for you so that you know for the rest of your life and you never have to worry about this again. Sports pages at 8:10. The Wexford football manager Shane Roche is going to join us at 8:20. Sports news at 8:40. Michelle Owen, as we talked about, going to talk to us about her Wembley experience at 8:45. Martin Lipton going to talk to us about the fallout from England's defeat on penalties, and Kevin Kilbane in rare form last night. So we'll bring you that at 9:30 as well. As ever, if there's anything you'd like to get involved in, use the hashtag OTB AM. And we will bring your comments to everybody else. And you can leave a comment on the YouTube channel as well. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors. OK, so at the weekend, Mayo annihilated Leitrim by 24 points in the Connacht semi-final. The scoreline was 5-20 to 11 points. We had live updates from Andy Moran throughout the game on Sunday's OTB, and obviously post-match analysis, and looking forward to the Connacht football final. But afterwards, Leitrim boss Terry Hyland spoke about the state of the championships with Tommy.
Well, look, to be honest with you, we were just outclassed and outgunned, and that was it. We were probably caught in most sectors of the pitch, and we just wasn't fit to live with them. And there's no point in me turning the glass over. You know what I mean? Everybody's seen what they've seen, and that was it. And that's the difference, unfortunately, between the teams in the bottom divisions and the teams in the top divisions.
Not really a whole lot you can do on the sideline on a day like that. Mayo weren't top on so many different sectors.
No, but I suppose it goes back to, and we've heard the rhetoric all year about probably the makeup of the championships and where it's going and where is football going to end up in this country, because they call it an All-Ireland, but unfortunately it's not an All-Ireland. It's probably top 5 or 6 counties, and my fear is that in 10 years' time it'll go like rugby, and you'll see the smaller so-called weaker counties being feeders to the bigger guys, and TV and money come into play, and I have that fear that's the way it's going to go.
So Terry Hyland there talking to the assembled media in the aftermath. Oh, what is going on here? Sorry.
Your phone is being hacked, and somebody's messing with you this morning. All good?
I mean,
it's a ghost.
I recently moved from Android to Apple. It's not an experience that I would recommend to anybody for a multitude of different reasons, but particularly the one where it just keeps randomly talking to you.
Oh, I forgot you're a member of the Apple cult now, fully signed up. And there was I talking about Google Assistant earlier. You didn't correct me.
Well, yeah.
It's Siri. Siri's the one who's ruined OTB.
Shut up, don't mention her.
OK, so we're going to talk about the GAA Championships this morning. Obviously, there's a lot of frustration with how things have gone in the Football Championship this year, and it feels like Groundhog Day. The difference this year is that somebody is trying to do something about Groundhog Day, and there is a special congress going on later on this year. It was supposed to be part of a special congress earlier this year fixing the football championship, but they postponed it because the GAA wanted meaningful in-person debate. They didn't want to sort this whole problem out via Zoom, basically. And what has happened is, through the calendar review task force, 2 proposals are going to go to the table this year at Special Congress. What we've done is we have simulated the championship this morning based on how the 2021 summer would have looked if Proposal A was already in play, and how the 2021 summer would have looked if Proposal B was in play. So Proposal A, just to give you the format here, first of all, it is the Football League staying in its current place, but then using the finishing positions to determine seedings for the provincial championship. So it would still be league, provinces, All Ireland. The provinces would be changed in a significant way, though. Instead of having your uneven pools of teams, you would have 4 groups of 8. So some Leinster counties would switch to Munster and Connacht, and then one Ulster county would go to Connacht. So what would happen, and there's been a number of different ideas as to how they're actually going to rebalance the proposals. One of the suggestions has been that they are going to run preliminary games for these based on seedings from the National League. So we can have a look at what the preliminary fixtures would have been this year if we based this on league standings. So this is obviously the bottom 6 teams in Leinster playing off on a seeded basis versus, and then also the bottom 2 teams in Ulster playing off against one another. So on screen we have Offaly versus Wexford, Longford versus Carlow, Wicklow versus Louth, and then the Ulster playoff would be Cavan versus Antrim. So a couple of those teams, a couple of the losers from the Leinster preliminary round are going to be told to go off to Munster. It's kind of like having the sorting hat on your head in Hogwarts and being told you're not getting into Gryffindor, you're off to Hufflepuff with you, and you're not good enough to be involved in Leinster anymore, you're not good enough to be involved in Ulster anymore. So I would have it here that Offaly, Longford and Louth will be the winners of those Leinster games, just for argument's sake. That's what we're going to go for. And I'm going to say that Cavan have beaten Antrim in that Ulster preliminary round. So Wexford and Carlow, congratulations, you're part of the Munster Football Championship now. Wicklow and Antrim, even bigger congratulations, you are part of the Connacht Football Championship. So let's have a look at how the provinces would look then as a result of this. We'll start with the Munster Championship, and what they're going to do is they're going to split the 8 teams into 2 groups of 4. They've suggested that this will be done on a seeded basis. So Group A is seeds 1, 3, 5, 7, and the opposite for Group B. So Group A is Kerry, Cork, Tip and Wexford. Group B is Clare, Limerick, Waterford, Carlow. Every team plays one another once, round robin, World Cup style, whatever you want to say. The initial problem there, as you can see, is that Kerry are going to be playing Wexford. Is this really the solution, that we're going to see pastings continue to happen, but even more pastings continue to happen?
Do we know? I presume Wexford are given equal status. It's not like Galway, who never get a home game in the Leinster Hurling Championship.
We don't know for that, but I would assume so.
Wexford Park would be so.
That would be great, wouldn't it? That would make sense. And then obviously the opposite there: Clare, Limerick, Waterford, Carlow. So for argument's sake, I'm just going to go through these to tell you who gets through. So the top 2 teams will go to the provincial final. So the top from A, the top from B. I have this down as Kerry versus Clare. The bottom teams, the bottom in A and the bottom in B, will be relegated to the Tailteann Cup. So I have this down as Wexford and Waterford. We'll come back to that in a moment. And then the middle 4 teams will go into round 1 of the qualifiers for Sam Maguire. So Cork, Tip, Limerick and Carlow.
So you have the Munster Championship happens, and is there a final?
There is a provincial final, yeah.
Okay, so the top 2 teams.
Top 2 teams, and then the winner of the provincial final will also get a further leg up in terms of getting deeper into the championship. 2 byes, essentially, if you want to put it that way. And the beaten provincial finalists will also have a bye into round 3 of the qualifiers. Essentially, the quarterfinals, you'll be guaranteed a quarterfinal place if you win your province. And if you lose your provincial final, you'll essentially be in the last round of the qualifiers. We'll quickly run through what all the other provinces would look like. Leinster will be a little bit slimmed down. Group A will be Dublin, Meath, Laois, Longford. Group B will be Kildare, Westmeath, Offaly, Louth. That I would have down as a Dublin-Kildare final. Longford and Louth would drop into the Tailteann Cup. Meath, Laois, Westmeath, Offaly into the qualifiers. Ulster also slimmed down. Donegal, Armagh, down for Fermanagh will be one group. Tyrone, Monaghan, Derry, Cavan will be the other. The Ulster final, as I see it, would be Donegal, Tyrone. The Tailteann Cup teams will be Fermanagh and Cavan. And this is another little hitch that I can see. I can see the Tailteann Cup winners in this format being an Ulster team the majority of the time. Cavan in the Tailteann Cup, possibly too strong for the Tailteann Cup. The qualifiers, Armagh, Down, Monaghan and Derry go in there. Connacht then will be beefed up as a result of the added teams that they've got. Group A will be Galway, Mayo, Leitrim, Antrim. Ooh. Group B will be Roscommon, Sligo, London, Wicklow. So Mayo, Roscommon, Connacht final, Galway, Antrim, Wicklow, Sligo into the qualifiers. And then the Tailteann Cup would have Leitrim and London going into it. So if we just move it on, I think is it the Tailteann Cup next? Yeah, so the Tailteann Cup, we'll just have a quick look at the bracket here. This is just an open draw that I put together. You'll notice that New York are in there. In both proposals, New York are being looked after as a Tailteann Cup team. It doesn't seem like they will take place in the take part in the Connacht Championship in this proposal. They might take part in the Connacht Championship in proposal B, which we'll get to in just a moment. So as you can see, just with a random draw there, the Cavan and Fermanagh side of the draw, even Longford on that side, looks particularly strong, and you would expect that side of the draw to come out on top throughout that. There would probably be an anomaly most years where a team like Cavan just plummets and finds their way in there because they can't get out of their group in
and we
Ulster.
have to assume, like when we spoke with Enda McGinley, referred to this as the Losers' Cup, and do the Cavan footballers, having won Ulster as recently as last season, do they stick around, care about the Tailteann Cup? Does that excite the supporters? Will Kingspan Breffni be heaving for the visit of New York?
Well, if they get to go to New York, I'm sure that everybody will go. That would be the sweetener. But that is the real issue, and that is something. I just feel sometimes that that will be the reality,
yeah.
And it's going to be really difficult to actually find out how that's fixed. The Tailteann Cup, you would assume, needs to be on All-Ireland final day, and
so those teams in the Tailteann Cup will have had 3 championship matches, and likely because they're not particularly strong, it could be 3 defeats in most cases.
Yeah, because they'll finish bottom of their group. So yeah, and you would assume that there would be a couple of pastings as well dished out in pretty much all of those groups. There's really no group there but that don't have a big hitter in there that can do a lot of damage to a Division 4 team. So that will happen. That's the reality. Let's have a look then at how the qualifiers would have looked. So round 1 of the qualifiers, again, this is a random draw. What I've done is I've kept teams away from other teams in their province, and I assume that's how it will be done in reality. So we've got Sligo against Down. The teams in green are the ones that I've put down as the winners. Galway to beat Derry, Laois to beat Wicklow, Armagh to beat Offaly, Monaghan to beat Cork, that would be a cracking tie, Carlow to lose to Antrim, Meath to beat Tip, and Westmeath to beat Limerick. Down as the winners against Sligo, by the way. And that one, you just roll it through it again.
So you get 1 extra game if you get beaten in the qualifiers first round.
Yeah.
That's your season over.
That's your season over. And then round 2, it's just the same teams again, completely open draw. Monaghan versus Down, Monaghan to win. Galway to beat Meath. Sorry, Tommy, I know he's listening in. Armagh to beat Laois, and then Westmeath to beat Antrim. And then those winners go into the next round, and they go up against the beaten provincial finalists. So as you can see there's a couple of good ties, in particular Tyrone against Galway, which would be a very, very good tie. And then the 4 provincial winners then await.
So did any of these teams come through from the first round of the qualifiers? They didn't. Some of them are second. The Westmeath or Clare, did they come through the first round of the qualifiers?
But the 4 teams there came through the first round of the qualifiers.
So you could have played 6 matches to get to this point?
Yeah.
Right.
3, 4, 5, 6. Well, this would be your 6th match, wouldn't it?
The one on the screen.
One on the left, yeah.
So you had 6 matches to get to an All-Ireland quarter-final against a team who's played 3 matches.
4, because they'll have won their provincial title as well.
Provincial final as well. Sorry, 4.
So, the thing is here, if we're hoping for these structures to drastically change the course of Sam Maguire, it's obviously not going to happen. You can see there that you do have those 4 big teams kept apart.
And sorry, if you win your provincial title, you could be waiting a month before the All-Ireland quarter-final as well. Potentially, if you've got 3 matches in between.
Yeah, I would assume what will happen is that your provincial final happens on round 1 or round 2 of the qualifiers. And really that's only one week. So I don't think that's too much of an issue. It'll probably be the round 1 of the qualifiers, and then you have maybe a rest week, or maybe round 2, and then you have a rest week, and then you're into your quarter final. And I don't think anybody needs me to explain what happens after that. It's a pretty straight up bracket.
Dublin win.
Correct. Dublin win and Kerry Dublin final. Not too different to how people might actually be calling it this year. So that's proposal A. That's the more complicated of the proposals.
And just like this was the proposal that it seemed was gathering the most momentum pre-COVID. There was definitely a sense that the 4 provinces of 8 was going to be the one that had the political support from people at Congress to get through, right? Just bear that in mind, that I definitely, from speaking with various people around the country, the strength of the provincial councils and the provincial championships was being ratcheted in forever. And that what you've just described there was going to be the football championship for us for, you know, the foreseeable, really.
That's interesting that you said that. Like, I haven't really spoken to too many people who'll actually be voting on this. I think Proposal B is one that maybe has more of the momentum now, or certainly started to build a bit of momentum.
Things have
the league.
changed.
Yeah, because the league was really good this year. And Proposal B...
New information came to light.
Exactly. New information came to light. And B would see the provincial championships being moved to earlier in the year as standalone competitions. There's been a little bit of detail on how these provincial championships would actually operate. So the GAA have said that the Leinster Championship, or the GAA have suggested that the Leinster Championship should consist of 1 round-robin group of 6 and 1 round-robin group of 5, and the Ulster Championship would be a group of 5 and a group of 4. There was no specifics as far as I could see on how they want to see the Munster and Connacht run. I presume it's also just one group of a round-robin championship rather than knockout. So that's how they see it. And I think the reason why they're doing that is because they can say to the provinces, you can have extra games. You can have this. Sure, it's not going to be in the summer. It'll be in February, March, but you'll have more games. So those finances that you're worried about, you'll be able to claw a bit of that back. So effectively, Proposal B is moving the league to the summer, just flipping the provincials and the league around. What you will have is a bunch of preliminary quarter-finals. So the top 5 teams in Division 1 are safe. They're into the Sam Maguire. They're going into the All-Ireland Championship. The top 3 teams in Division 2 are also going to be going through. Then the top team in Division 3 and the top team in Division 4. So what you will have then is the...
Can I sorry, everybody's in Sam Maguire. Everybody.
Well, that's a good point.
Yeah. So that's the key selling point. And one of the big problems that we've had footballers from various teams, and they're like, look, I wouldn't be interested in a B championship if I knew I was in the B championship from the start of the year. At the start of the year, when you gather off books in October and it's completely under the radar and you're not allowed to be doing the collective training sessions, but we all know you're doing it anyway, you're doing it because you're actually in with a chance. If you're in a Division 4 team and you win Division 4, you're in the All-Ireland quarterfinals or preliminary quarterfinals, or last 16. So everybody's in. That's everybody's bought the lottery ticket. Everybody's
bought the lottery ticket. It will be interesting that and it'll be unbelievably high stakes from Division 1. 3 teams from Division 1 will not progress to the knockout stages of the All-Ireland Championship. So it just makes the league format all the more important. But as you're right, the language needs to change around this. I'm still in the headspace of the league is influencing the Sam Maguire destination. No, it's not that. The league is the championship, you know, and that's something that maybe we need to change if this does come to fruition. It's just those sort of attitudes that are obviously quite baked in. So what you would have is you'd have a preliminary quarter-finals, first of all, and this would be the 4 lowest ranked teams who have progressed to the next round. So from the bottom up, you'd have the Division 4 number 1 team, the Division 3 number 1 team, and then teams number 2 and team number 3 from Division 2. So on screen here, we have those preliminary quarter-finals from this year. Again, this is not an exact science because the leagues were split in half. I had to do a little bit of guesswork here. Both of these were 8-team divisions. I suspect it would have been Kildare versus Antrim in one preliminary quarter-final. So that's the number 2 team in Division 2 versus the number 1 team in Division 4.
So hang on, preliminary quarter-finals is actually last 16, essentially.
Yeah, last 12, let's say.
But you know, if you had a bracket, it would look like last 16. There's only 12 teams left, but they're filtering into. Okay, so Kildare finished where?
Kildare came 2nd in Division 2. Antrim came 1st in Division 4. Meath came 3rd in Division 2. Derry came 1st in Division 3.
So only the winners of Division 3 and Division 4 make it to this stage?
Correct.
Okay, right, brilliant. Like, it's not perfect, but it's a vast... So bear in mind, how many games have Kildare and Antrim played to get to this point?
7.
In the summertime?
Yeah.
At home, 3 of those or 4 of those games, depending on the year?
Yeah.
So an absolutely full casement eventually, an absolutely full new rate eventually. Let's go to Navan and Celtic Park. They're rammed in high summer,
yeah,
like Saturday evening, Sunday afternoon, everybody's at these games. It's full championship. Like, all the under-20s are available. There's no internal strife about it because the seasons have been perfectly worked out. And at the end of the summer, when everybody is fully conditioned, Meath play Derry in knockout with a place in the All-Ireland quarter-final, having had loads of games to get ready and decide their style of play. And likewise, Kildare playing Antrim after the league campaign.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, it's actually, yeah, and this is actually the last 10 actually, if I'd actually done my maths correctly, rather than the last 12. So you're in the top 10 teams in the country essentially, and everybody has the option to get there. If you just roll it on, then the winners there, I've kind of like picked the Division 2 teams as the winners there naturally, and they would move into the quarterfinals, which I assume would be seeded. Again, this is just an assumption on my part.
I think it has to be seeded, and I think that's the key to making the league matter in Division 1, right? Mm-hmm. So it absolutely has to be seeded. There's like, and is it possible that you can have home advantage for All-Ireland quarterfinals? Like, why not?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be a massive...
Bring the show to Croke Park then for the last 3 games? Like, I think it's definitely worth...
Can I make one other wrinkle?
Yeah.
There's like, it's 7 matches you'll play, isn't it, in the 4 divisions of 8?
Yeah.
So 3 home, 3 away, and 1 match in Croker. How does that sound? So every Saturday and Sunday there are matches in Croker from the start of the league campaign in the summertime. So you're filling Croker if you want with like a team from Division 4, 2 teams. So Leitrim get to play in Croker, Longford get to play in Croker. Everybody gets to play in Croker at least once in the... I mean, there's a bit of fixture shenanigans to work out, but you get 3 home, 3 away, 1 game in Croker. Does that sound like a disaster?
No, and what you could do is, because all those games in Croker, you could essentially have them all on the same weekend, and you could elongate. You could have like a Division 3 takeover of Croke Park, whatever, for a weekend or something, and then the next week could be Division 4 or whatever. There's a lot of really good creative ideas like that could make this thing go to the next level. The seeds thing, we're not sure if that's in there or not, but I think that if they're going to base the preliminary quarterfinals on your seedings, then it makes sense to have the actual quarterfinals based on the seedings. As you saw there, Kerry had just pipped Dublin to the #1 seed in this year's championship. So they have Meath rather than Kildare. And again, people know the rest when it comes to these sort of things.
So just like, I think we should just explain that. So who would Kerry have played already before they get to an All-Ireland quarter-final? They would have played Mayo, Dublin, Donegal, Tyrone, Armagh.
Next year, yeah. Those would be the teams.
And there's 2 more. Oh, they'd play Kildare in Division 1 and they'd play...
They'll play Kildare in Division 1 and did Monaghan stay up? Monaghan stayed up, yeah.
So they're the 7 games that we would have seen Kerry play. 3 in Killarney, 3 away from home, and potentially 1 in Croker if we were to add that wrinkle. Mm-hmm. In high summer, think of all the possibilities. Like, suddenly, fantasy makes sense. You can have a proper fantasy campaign. It's like an 8-match where you pick your team. Like, that's one thing. You can have all-stars from the 4 divisions. You can insist on the TV broadcasters showing a Division 4 match. And actually, everybody's going to watch it. Like, good quality football. We've seen when Louth played Offaly, it was some of the best quality of match because the 2 teams were very close to each other and there was drama. There was an uncertainty of outcome. And that's all people want when they're sitting watching sport on TV.
The other wrinkle to this then is what happens with the Tailteann Cup. So essentially, the top team... So Derry and Antrim, who've come out of Division 3 and 4, everyone except for them is going to take part in the Tailteann Cup. So these are the teams, plus New York. Again, you'd have the likes of Cavan in there, but everybody else would go in there. What it would be is a preliminary quarterfinals, 7 games, plus 1 team who gets a bye, a quarterfinals, a semi-finals, and a final. I'm not sure, like that's it. Like, I often think that New York would probably be thrown in the preliminary almost every single time as a way of getting them involved early. And then there's just a tiny wrinkle here is that the top team only in Division 3 and same with Division 4 will be promoted. The top team in Division 3 will be promoted automatically to Division 2 for the following year with the Tailteann Cup winners. Now, if a Division 4 team wins a Tailteann Cup, the second place team in Division 3 will be the team promoted to Division 2 the following year. So if you come second in Division 3, basically, you're not guaranteed to get promoted to the Tailteann Cup because there is a promotion place siphoned off for the Tailteann Cup winner, assuming it's not the #1 team.
That's complicated.
It's a little bit, yeah. Like, it just increases the incentive for the Tailteann Cup.
Yeah. What if you have a brilliant league campaign, finish second in Division 3, and then get beaten because of a refereeing decision or a sending off or a missed penalty or something? That's harsh, right?
I guess it is like a.
Do you have to reward the winners of the Tailteann Cup with a place? I mean, you could reward them with a place in Sam Maguire the next year as a preview, like a
prelim.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit ridiculous, isn't it?
Like, that's the whole point, is that you're in Division 2, therefore you're in Sam Maguire next year, and that's why automatic promotion is given. And I guess it's about connecting the league and the championship. Again, making sure that those two things kind of have a very close relationship rather than being seen as a...
Is the winning of the Tailteann Cup not enough in itself? There needs to be like... there's like a massive holiday fund or something.
And that's going to be one of the key conversations about how they actually make it more attractive for everybody involved, for people to want to watch it, for the players to want to play in it. And All-Ireland final day, I think, and I think next day is writing down in the Irish Times this morning as well, is a key point in all of that. Now, of course, there is a third option here. There is a third option open to those people who will be at Special Congress later this year, and that is to do nothing. That is to leave things as they are and to not take any of these. And Larry McCarthy, speaking at the qualifier draw yesterday, said, inevitably, when you've an open draw, you're going to have one-sided contests. When you've got a Tier 4 against a Tier 1 team, it's going to happen. We're going to have a robust debate. The Fixtures Review Committee is up for discussion in the autumn. It'll give us an opportunity to review it. But any unwieldy scores like that, Mayo Leitrim, are challenging, but I wouldn't push the panic button yet. So GAA President, not in a state of panic just yet about what we're seeing. I just wonder if we're going to get to the Special Congress at the end of the year and there will be enough people invested in the current state of the provincial championships.
Well, I don't know what the state of the... I don't actually know what the... So we were supposed to have a change before the pandemic hit. So last season and this season isn't real. What is the Super 8's gone? 100% gone?
Well, it didn't get its 3 years of trial. So
what would the status quo actually be? The qualifiers without
the Super 8s, I would suspect.
And the Tailteann Cup?
Yeah.
Right.
Or maybe the Super 8's thrown in as well, but like either way, it's not necessarily the most attractive prospect.
That'll be a pig's Mickey.
Yeah, no, I think the proposal will be, of all the available opportunities for the GAA next year, I think is definitely the best option to be taken. I would be really interested to see as well, those the provincial championships, do they die in the vine earlier in the year? Or is there actually like this sense of pride about the teams who are in danger of being beaten by an underdog? Where Dublin are like, when they eventually get beaten by Kildare, for example, in the cold nights of February, that the next year they come out and they're like, screw you Kildare, we're coming out and we're actually going to try and hammer you. Like that there will be a real sense of actually trying to win these things because it is your proper pre-season, people will be fighting for places in teams. That there is this, obviously, the fear out there that they completely die because they are pre-season or they will be deemed to be pre-season. But I just wonder if that will actually be the case. Okay,
I think Tommy is with us on Skype. Tommy, how do the Meath people feel about this?
Ger, how you doing? I think the way you guys have, never mind the Meath people, I think there's clearly one proposal there that's a lot better than the other. I'd love to not talk about Proposal A at all because I just think it's such a waste of time doing that. It's such a natural thing to have each of the provinces all lined up with 8 teams in each. But like, we need to move beyond that. We need to move something closer to Proposal B.
It feels unnatural though to have Antrim in the Connacht Football Championship, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I think that's their really slow way of eviscerating the power of the provincial championships. What was really disappointing at the weekend that you had somebody with the power of Jim McGuinness coming out and talking about the importance of history and the importance of the provincial championships. Quite selfish, I thought. Like, we're all going to have to give up a little here to actually fix the football championship. I've been very lucky to go to a couple of games this year. Not one of them have been competitive. And like, I know there's only 12 counties left, but there's a chance that we're going to have, like, the Meath Dublin game could very well not be competitive this weekend. Who knows what Kildare Westmeath is going to go like? And then you're left with the last 8 teams. But regardless of that, I don't really care about the competitiveness. I'm looking at the Leitrim lads walking off the pitch the last day. Like, what is the use of that? What is the point? So I think the GAA has to do something here to fix the football championship, make it a better product for people at home, and allow the smaller counties to be able to progress. So I think it needs to be something closer to Proposal B. It has to be. The
players, it's a players' organisation, and at its heart, it's a players' organisation. And actually, the point you're making about the Leitrim footballers, either we value the fact that playing for your county means something, or it doesn't. It means a ritual humiliation in front of your own people year in, year out, and we scrabble around trying to find people to volunteer to be the next one over to get machine gunned. Or we actually say, yeah, we do value that, and you can have a brilliant career where you can win a Division 3 or a Division 4 and get into Division 2 and improve the stock of the whole county and compete in big games. Maybe you reverse seed, so the Division 3 and the Division 4 winners get a home game in the preliminary round of 16. They do that in the wild card in the NFL, where the team who randomly qualifies, who just squeaks in, gets a home game. It's like, well, this is unfair, but actually it's brilliant because it leads to uncertainty of outcome. So.
Yeah. Look, you're going to be speaking to Wexford boss Shane Roche in a couple of minutes' time. They had a good experience against Dublin. They had them at home in Wexford Park. I wonder how that game would have gone in Croke Park.
OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. I think we are officially on the option B. Is that what the language is? Option B?
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's the official language, but that's certainly Plan B is what we have suddenly christened it. Yeah.
Yeah, let's go to Plan B. 21 minutes past 8. Very busy show for you. Still to come, we're going to hear from Martin Lipton and Kevin Kilbane after 9. We're going to talk to football reporter Michelle Owen about her experience in Wembley. Up next, Wexford football boss Shane Roche joins us live.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast? If not, here's some of what you've missed over the last week.
I didn't want to be part of the homecomings back to Dublin when we got back from Korea back into Dublin. I just wanted just to get away from things.
Get yourself on YouTube and just put their plays on a loop. The violence that they tackle with is just absolutely brilliant.
Well, so far you've heard my voice, but then I brought 2 friends along. Next on the mic is my man Ger. Come on, Ger, sing that song.
David Weiler.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts and download the OTB Sports app.
Sean, what's that thing going round the garden?
That is our new Husqvarna Automower.
Automower?
Yeah, it's a robotic lawnmower from Husqvarna. Cuts the grass automatically, has GPS tracking and an app. Even works in the rain. I just thought, why spend time cutting grass when I could spend it with the family?
Great! You can put the dinner on, so...
No can do, love. Have to paint the man cave.
Husqvarna Automower. Never mow again. Learn more at husqvarna.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Like, for example, me as a forward, my best games always came east of the Shannon. They always came out of Connacht. Like, they never came at home, because for an inside forward, Paddy will tell you.
100%. Jesus.
Top of the ground, you're turning, you're twisting. Like, you look at Kilkenny last week, he can't get away from his man the way he wants to. Con isn't getting the freedom, Scully isn't getting the freedom, and it's they're struggling. And the scores, but like, you can see next week now, or the week after next, like, the ball is coming in, Connor's running out, he does the double back, it's in over the head, it's goal. You can see it already happening. And for me, for the game to grow in Leinster, Dublin, like, them games, like down in Wexford, like, you heard the cheer from the Wexford fans. Like, well, how many fans? 200 to 500 people. And
500, I think.
Yeah, it was like if they were winning the game at half-time. Like, they hadn't scored since about the 8th minute. And they nearly lifted the roof. Like, it was amazing. For them players, like, you want them to go into the gym. You want Roche wants them to go into the gym in November, December, or from now, to be honest, into the gym.
Yeah.
Like, you remember them things. You remember that cheer. You remember the appreciation the people had for you going in. And to me, it was a real special moment. I was a bit pissed off, to be honest, with the Sunday game, that they joined the game at 2 points all. You know, poor old Wexford, like, they went 3-2 up, like, you know, show their first 3 points to show the people that these Wexford guys can actually play the game. They're there to compete. But for Division 4 sides, Antrim and themselves, to put up such a good show, and again, it's not pandering to them or anything like that. Enda McGinley, Shane Roche, these guys should get a pat on the back. The way that their team's conditioned and ready to play was great to see for the championship.
Yeah, so that is Andy Moore in there last week speaking about Wexford's performance against Dublin in the Leinster Championship on the latest episode of the Football Pod with Paddy and Andy. Episode 10 is out this Wednesday. Go and subscribe to the feed, search the Football Pod with Paddy and Andy. You can find it on the OTB GAA podcast. And really the best place to get it these days is the OTB Sports app. Just search OTB Sports in the App Store and download that. And you can subscribe to it, and we'll send you a notification every time it goes. And you can stick on automatic downloads, just for when you're on Wi-Fi. It costs you nothing. Shane Roche is actually with us this morning. Shane, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning. Hope all is well.
Is it hard to listen to how well you did when actually you're out of the championship, or is it a good sign that things are going in the right direction for you? How do you feel now about hearing something like that from Andy Moran?
Yeah, it was great. It was great to hear it back, and I didn't actually catch that one. And if I was honest, I wanted the lads to hit the gym Monday morning, the day after the game, and just get going for 2022. But yeah, it's great. Like when you know, a Division 4 team, and you're you know, you have your man markers on Kilkenny, Scully, and Con, and they're nullifying them. I suppose it gives great encouragement to myself and to the players that, look, we do have players to compete. We set them up to compete. We spoke about not just going out there to run around with them, and you know, the handicap being 24 points, and just you know, Dublin saunter to that. We would have played on the fact it was in Wexford Park. It's always windy in Wexford Park, and to make their stay in Wexford as uncomfortable as possible.
And you managed that. Well, so can you talk, before we get into the championship and all the rest of that, like, talk to us about planning for the Dubs. What was, from, obviously you knew from a while back that this was going to be the game. How do you build that plan? What are you looking for? And what weaknesses have you seen, if any, in that group?
Yeah, I suppose, you know, like leading into the Wicklow game, that was the biggest game of our year. It was potentially, you know, our first opportunity to win a championship game for 7 years in Leinster. So we had done very little, I suppose, on Dublin. It was always around Wicklow, and then after that game, I suppose you have the attitude. You've succeeded in what you've set out to do in beating Wicklow and getting that monkey off the players' back. But as the week went on, and I would have spoke to the players, and even here in the house, my wife Carmel, she was saying, God, you're nearly worse than you were last week, because the more people I met, the more they were saying, isn't it great you're playing Dublin, you should give it your best shot. That sort of attitude was kind of probably within the county, and I was hoping that wasn't going to seep into the group. And I suppose I got more I suppose aggressive towards the end of the week, that this wasn't what I wanted for the Wexford players, that we were going to just be happy to be playing Dublin, that I wanted them to come down and I wanted us to put our best foot forward. I would have said after the game, we'll show them the respect that they deserve, and probably what I meant by that was to give them one hell of a game, to set up how we wanted to set up and test them in different areas. But and you know, and for large parts of the game we did. And I watched the game back a couple of times, and there was opportunities where we could have, after the first water break, we gave the ball away, and straight away they scored from it. You know, if we were a little bit more composed, it could have been tighter at half time, and then the second half. You know, they pulled away in that between the second half and the water break. I suppose, yeah, do they have any weaknesses? I suppose we would have, as I said, played on the fact that it was Wexford Park. It was going to be, you know, uncomfortable for them. They were starting their campaign. We had a very, very tough championship game. We were battle hardened after the Wicklow game, and we were going to, you know, try and hone in on that, and as I said, make it as uncomfortable as possible. But the key thing that I learned about Dublin is their problem solving. You can't give them a water break, or you can't give them 10 minutes, 15 minutes for half time, because anything that we would have come up with to try and disrupt them, once they had time to stop, reflect, come up with the answers, then they nullified the threat. So like in the first half, we would have wanted to keep the ball in play as much as possible. We wanted high-octane football. The water break comes to get a bit of a reset. Half-time comes, they could look at what we're doing on our kick-out, their kick-out. They come up with the answers. And then at the start of the second half, they kept the ball for 4.5 minutes, comes back to Brian Howard in the pocket, and he kicks one outside the right, and you're kind of saying to yourself, okay, they're trying to take the sting out of it, which is what they did. And then they tagged on a few more points, and they made it more difficult for us to keep that level of intensity up. So that was good to see. was good to see from Dublin, and it's great to see him up close and personal, how they do that and how they play patience and play the game on their terms.
So if you had to play the game in the morning again, Shane, what would you do differently than having watched it back multiple times?
I suppose when you're looking at trying to focus in on making it uncomfortable for them and making contact and making, turning the ball over, the next aspect is composure. So you're going in the white heat of battle, but then when you have it, it's to calm it all down and not give it back to them, not turn it over, because invariably any of the scores they got in the first half either came from a turnover or a free, and from overzealous tackling. You just have to, when you have the ball, you have to try and keep it. You have to play it on your terms, and that's probably a key aspect. We would have had maybe 2 or 3 balls in the middle third, and we tried to force a kick pass inside. I think 2 went out over the sideline, line ball down the far end of the field, score, where we've turned them over. Now let's play patience with them and play our game, that's all the focus for us was. Everyone's talking about Dublin. Everyone's talking about, what they're at and who they have. But for me, it was all about, look, we're not going to deviate from our plan, how we set up, and the game we play. And that's probably an aspect, a little bit more composure in front of goal. And when we had the ball was probably the key aspect that I'd focus on if I had it all back again.
It's interesting that you mention them with free kicks, and if you give them an opportunity, if you're tackling overzealously, that's the opportunity. What about when they had the ball at the tee, Shane? Because you're getting a close-up version of Dublin in the Championship without Cluxton. Is it different to what you expected?
Well, look, realistically, we would have spoke about not overly committing to pressing their kick out, because I think the majority of the time they're going to retain their ball anyway. So for us, if we commit a 12-man press and Comfort goes over, like they did last year against Meath, Conor Callaghan gets it, a goal, we're out of the game. Where we were happy enough to maybe allow them win it as close to their goal as possible, and then for us to stay in the game, they had to then come through us, try and turn the ball over and then hit them with that. But like their movement on kickouts, I know we talk about various goalkeepers, but their movement on kickouts, how synchronised they are on kickouts, and then the range of kicking from Evan Cumberford, for me, in 1 week, trying to come up with a 12-man press, 9 people doing it, 3 people doing something different. Dublin will hone in on that and punish you, which will be invariably with a goal up the far end. So we just kind of said, what's the lesser of 2 evils? Okay, they're going to win it anyway, but maybe the best thing is that they win it as far away from our goal as possible, and make it as difficult as possible to get up to our scoring zone or their scoring zone.
In terms of your own identity and your style of play, how easy has it been for you over the last period of time to get that into the players and just communicate that, practice it, hone it, get good at it?
Yeah, I suppose we would have. Everyone's talking about the lockdown, but for me as a young manager, kind of trying to figure out what way I wanted to go about it, what way I wanted Wexford to play. I suppose there was a lot of time for planning. We did various Zooms, and it kind of gave me personally and the management team, it gave us great time to get everything together. And then when we met through, as I said, Zooms, that we could iron out how we wanted to play. Like if it turned around and there was no lockdown and we were straight away into National League football, I'd say we wouldn't be as set as we were, but we used the time wisely to plan. And then I suppose the greatest compliment is that yesterday I was over in the gym and I saw a number of the players in the gym, and they kind of now know what's expected, which is what 2022 is expected for the Wexford footballers, the level of fitness, the level of conditioning that's required. So that then for me is great to see that there's there'll be very little deviating from the plan from this year to next year. It's the same thing, but it's at a higher level for me. It's lads better conditioned, better strength, better I suppose basic skills, and we continue, I suppose, what we call the Wexford way, how we want to go about it and what we want to do with the ball in hand.
Shane, the conversation that we've just been having there has been about the Plan A and Plan B and the options for championship structures. As somebody who is in Leinster, and we've obviously been talking about the Leinster Football Championship for the last 20 years on this show, it's never been in a more difficult state, because it's clear pretty much at the start of the competition who the winners are going to be. Maybe Meath can do something about it this weekend. Maybe Kildare or Westmeath can do something about it in the Leinster final this year, given all the retirements that Dublin have had. Maybe they can't. What's your take as a manager trying to convince your players to commit to play in the championship in the current structures? What do you want to see happen?
Yeah, I suppose the key to, I suppose everyone is saying it, is games, more games, and then the other aspect, you know, just listening to all the games over the weekend, it's whatever proposal, and look, it's going to be proposal B. A proposal A for me isn't going to be a runner. It's going to be a proposal B, but so that means we're going to be in the Tailteann Cup. So basically, how are we going to market that? How are we, as I always say to the group, we're the standard bearers for Wexford football. So when our time has passed as Wexford football, where have we left it? So the youth out there that are looking, the kids that I teach in school, you know, are we selling a product that they want to play football for Wexford? And like days against Dublin, you know, that whets the appetite. A success against Wicklow, but it really is. Are these games going to be televised? Are the likes of Martin O'Connor, Gavin Sheehan, Owen Porter, Mark Rosser, are they going to be household names known around the country, or are they going to be, you know, kind of pushed off to the side for obviously the more elite teams that will be playing in the All-Ireland series? So games is the key, but then obviously what way are we going to get the games out there for the public to watch them, to get into them, and to make it attractive, to the Tailteann Cup to be attractive. Like, can we match it up with? I think someone spoke over the weekend about matching the fixtures up with All-Ireland quarterfinals, All-Ireland semi-finals, or maybe playing the Tailteann Cup final on the same day as the All-Ireland football final, and make it, as I said, make it more attractive to be part of that. Because within Wexford, obviously we have in Leinster, we have Dublin, but obviously within our own county, you know, there's between hurling and football, and trying to get players, underage players at minor level, to either A, be dual players, or be football only players. And at the minute, and under 20 level as well, at the minute, obviously, with the success that Davy and the hurlers have had, their guys are willing now to be maybe on a minor hurling panel, not even the team, or a under 20 hurling panel, rather than potentially be on an under 20 or minor football team. And that's where we're at the minute. And I suppose that's my key, is that we, as the senior team, are out there, and people are saying, God, like, I want to play football for Wexford. That would have happened with me in the 2004, 2005, around that era, where the football was coming strong. The hurlers at that time, I don't think they'd played a Leinster or a championship game in Croke Park for 7 years. So football was on the high, and the majority of the kids around and were wanting to play football for Wexford. So that's the key for me, is that whatever we're doing, or whatever proposal or structure we're in, that we are representing the Wexford football the best way. And obviously, the way it is, the Sunday game soundtrack comes on, you want to be on that. You want to be seeing players getting nominated for All-Stars. You want to see it be you know, in the media a lot. And that's what kids are probably swaying towards. The Wexford hurlers this year play Laois, and then straight into Croke Park to play Kilkenny. And you know, that's a draw in itself, let's say.
I think the pandemic has forced a lot of creativity on a lot of people, and so for the first time ever, all those games could be streamed. And I guess the other thing about the Plan B is that the winners of Division 4 actually will compete for Sam Maguire. That's the kind of the bit where when your lads are in the gym training to go up against, or having been up against the Dubs and knowing what it takes, they can at least have a dream of playing them again if they were to go on a run next year in the league and to win Division 4. Then all of a sudden, you know, that is a huge opportunity for them to pit themselves against the best footballers in the country.
Yeah, no, you're dead right. And like the key for our goal is obviously the division. We're in Division 4 at the minute, but get as high up the divisions as possible. So obviously that means getting promoted, or and then into Division 3. And as you can see in Division 2, 2 teams are selected. 2 teams qualify. In Division 1, then 5 teams qualify. So yeah, I do see that. I actually did see Jim McGuinness on Saturday evening, and he was saying that it's strange that a Division 4 team, probably as he's seen ranked 26th in the country, gets into the All Ireland series ahead of a team that finishes 6th in Division 1. And they are no longer in the championship, or 3rd, 4th, and 5th in Division 2.
But like, that's grand. But that team who finishes 6th or 5th or 6th in Division 1 has lost 3 or 4 games in the league. Whereas the team in Division 4 has put their season together and won 7 out of 8 games. There's no situation is actually going to be perfect for everybody. That's the problem, isn't it?
That's the key. And in fairness, Peter Canavan did say that, like, if you're in Division 1 and you're finishing 6th, 7th, and 8th, you haven't done your job.
Yeah.
And down the house then for Division 2, Division 3, and obviously in Division 4, the winners, the top team in the division, go through to the All Ireland series. So that is a like a bonus. That's massive. That is a driving force for us to be part of. And then obviously, you're 1 game away from an All Ireland quarterfinal. And just listening to you before I came on, that game could be potentially at home. And that's then like in the NFL, and that's even bigger. Like you have a preliminary round for the All Ireland quarterfinal at home in Wexford Park, full attendance. You're like, that then is serious motivation for our boys and for Wexford football, and everyone within Division 4 to have their house in order and hit the ground running. Because obviously with 1 team qualifying, where in National League normally it's 2 teams go up, but it's only the top spot is key, and like that's massive motivation for the boys hitting the gym, running programs. That could be something. Playing an All-Ireland quarter-final in Croke Park would be massive.
In terms of you having an influence over this, it's actually really important that although Jim McGuinness is on TV and has been an All-Ireland winning manager, that your voice is heard as much. Are you talking to the county board about how the county is going to vote when this happens? Is that, like, I know it's not actually part of your job, but really, if this proposal does get through, it's a quantum leap, or a potentially quantum leap forward for the teams in Division 3 and Division 4. And like, I know lobbying politicians in GAA, it's not sexy and it's not cool, but are you ready for it? Is it something you want to do?
Yeah, look, as I said, I'm the manager of the Wexford football team. I'm the standard bearer. So what happens both on and off the field in relation to Wexford football is paramount to me. So I would be chatting to Micheál Martin about, what is the best fit for us as a county. And that is obviously, for me, proposal 2, more games, an opportunity to play in an All-Ireland series, or then next, more games in the Tailteann Cup against teams in around Division 3 and Division 4. So, I'd speak regular to him. We would have, I suppose the managers would have had a Zoom on updating us on this a number of months back. And it was the first time that I would have sat down and that this was actually going to affect me and affect the players, the current players of Wexford. A lot of these things are spoke about, but it's in 4 or 5 years' time or whatever. But this is coming down the tracks and it's coming down fast. So, like I would, it's important that it's what's best for Wexford football, that when our time is up and when we've moved on as a management team or as players, that we've left this in a better place, and that's the key thing for me. So I would be in contact saying this is what we need to do for us, for the development of football in Wexford.
Shane, in general, just before we let you go, you mentioned there I guess not just the external issue of having Dublin in your province, but obviously the internal, not battle with hurling, but the existence of hurling, the reality that hurling is in the ascendancy still at the moment in Wexford. How have you found that specific battle? Is it a battle for you from what you found as being senior football manager?
No, absolutely not. No, it's no battle at all. It's like, I'm fully aware that we're hurling county, that all probably our top senior football teams would probably do 50-50 training for hurling and football, or maybe even more. The county champions this year, Starlights, would see themselves primarily as, the referees, a hurling club, and they've done very well to win it. They've had like Liam Ryan, Kevin Foley, very talented hurlers and also very talented footballers. But no, it's not something. It's not something that I've had it all. In my club days, my school days, and in my inter-county days, and it kind of just ebbed and flowed. As I said, in the 2006, 7 and 8, we got to the Leinster final in 08, and at the time the hurlers hadn't, for 7 years, I think, hadn't got to Croke Park, where we were playing in Croke Park maybe once, twice a year. And people were more leaning towards that, but no, it's not something I worry about. It's been there. It's it's great. To be honest, I harness it. I think what Liam Dunn did to transform the team, and then obviously into Davy Fitz and what they've done. They're Wexford men. They, as I always say, they drink the same water. They eat the same food as us. They train on the same pitch as us, and they're contesting Leinster finals, All-Ireland semi-finals. So I look at what they've done S&C wise, and say, like, it's very much attainable for the Wexford footballers, but it's about putting the right structures in place, and getting the right people in the room, and then just simply going and doing it. And in fairness to the group, what they've done in the lockdown leading into this season has been fantastic. And they know my feelings. The end of 2021 is the beginning of 2022. So back to the clubs, but also their S&C continues, and they come back then to us in December at a better level of fitness as they are now, which is key, rather than regressing and having to do a full pre-season of trying to get them in good nick, that they come back in good nick. And then, as we spoke about, you can start implementing how you want to play and the key facets of your game plan. But if you have to spend time on conditioning, then that's not the level. That's not an elite level, in my opinion. So they're all aware that we begin now, and the targets will be set, and they program up, and they get going on what they need to do.
Shane, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Thanks very much.
It's Shane Roche there, the Wexford football manager, giving us pretty interesting insight into what you do to prepare for facing the Dubs, and also then, of course, a view on Plan A versus Plan B. And I think everybody is definitely coming to the conclusion that there's a good plan and there's a bad plan, and fingers crossed we're going to all pick the good plan. Isn't that right, everybody? 0879 180 180, that's the WhatsApp number if you want to get in touch this morning, or of course you can leave a comment on the YouTube stream. Now, we want to move on because we're going back to the situation around Wembley during the match on Sunday night, and I'm delighted to say broadcaster and football reporter Michelle Owen is with us here. Michelle, you were covering the Euros for ITV, and you've got a piece in the Telegraph today which outlines some fairly scary things that you saw. Can you talk to us a little bit about your experience? What did you see?
Yeah, I think when I've talked to people about it since, a few people have said, oh, what did you expect? But didn't expect anything like this. So we were doing some stuff around the periphery of the ground, not on Wembley Way. We were deliberately avoiding that because we know it was getting pretty lively. Even in the morning, it was getting lively. So we were on our way to the Club Wembley entrance and just waiting to do a few of the sort of VIPs and football legends going in. And the steward sort of stopped everyone. It went silent, put his hands up, and I thought, why is he so irate? Like, what's he so worried about? And everyone just stopped moving, and you just heard, like, all this crashing and banging. And then probably, like, 5 seconds later, just people sprinting in every direction. You're like, well, what's going on? You're thinking the worst at that point. Has someone got a gun, or is it like a terrorist attack? because you've seen things like that before, like on the news and the TV, and I couldn't compute what it could be. So we ran behind like a wall by the entrance, and then there's probably 100, 150 people just swarming towards us. They smashed down like the smaller gates by us, and they ran up the stairs to the upper concourse, and they were just basically breaking into Wembley. And the stewards, they're kids, and they stood there and they don't know what to do. So that was the first thing we saw. We filmed a little bit of it. And then after that, it was sort of wave after wave of this for about an hour. And it turns out in the end they did lock down Wembley. They weren't letting people in. And then the crowds outside were sort of so packed in and getting out of control, they had to open up Wembley again. To be fair, some of the stewards are sort of, I guess, forming like a human cordon, like linking arms, so people couldn't get through them. But, they didn't want to be there, quite clearly. The police didn't appear for ages. Finally, some riot police came down the stairs to sort of, I think, form a fence where the fence had been knocked down. If you've seen the pictures, there was sort of like a 6-foot fence, but they just knocked it over. Anyway, we get inside. We were told not to go inside for ages. We were told to stay put because it was too dangerous to go around to our entrance. Finally got inside. The checks weren't great, to be honest with you. Like, I had my media pass and things, and I found my seat. So, it's a game of a lifetime. You sit there and you think, right, try and enjoy this a little bit now. But we'd seen some stuff, people covered in blood, kids getting hurt, people getting knocked over. But you think, come on, we're in now. Surely they haven't got in. They had got in, because after about 10, 15 minutes, every minute there was just people trying to squeeze into our row, trying to sit down. It was kicking off between people because people were in there without tickets, and there's people next to who paid, 800 quid for a ticket. It was crazy. In the end, when it got towards the end of extra time and penalties, I just went up into the commentary box with some of my colleagues because I didn't feel safe where I was sat. Fights breaking out, English fans attacking English fans, Italian fans getting beaten up. I mean, I've been covering football for 10 years, and I've never seen anything like it. We went out to Rome, and the first part of my tournament I covered Wales, and I know the Welsh fans couldn't really get out to many games. I can't believe what we saw, and speaking to other people that were there, this is the worst game they've ever been to.
So, Michelle, the problems that happened outside continued inside even while the match was ongoing. 'Cause most of the stuff that we've seen, the videos, we've seen the fairly horrific videos of the, I think it's one of the disabled entrances being stormed, and then some fans deciding that they're going to push back the people and fights breaking out there. That was definitely pre-game, but from what you're saying, even while the game was ongoing, there was issues.
Yeah, so in the block we were in, there's sort of like a media area and observer seats where we were right by the commentary boxes. And then just below us, a family came up in tears, and my colleague said, look, you can't see it, you haven't got a ticket. This has been happening all game. They're like, we have got tickets, but there's so many people in our area, a massive fight's just broken out between English fans on English fans, and we can't sit there with our kids. There's kids in tears. People can't even watch the game because of what's going on. And if you look at the grand context of, I think there were 67,000 people in there, it was probably pockets of hundreds. But for those people, that game was absolutely ruined, and some of the stuff they saw is just frightening. I've heard of accounts of people walking out, and I do remember sitting there, and this guy comes and sits in front of me, and he says, oh, is anyone sitting here? And because of social distancing, there was a seat between us. And the guy in front of me says, no, you can sit there. And I said, what are you doing? He hasn't got a ticket. And then someone else comes and does it next to us, and uses some pretty bad expletives, saying to leave him alone. And he's the sort of guy you wouldn't mess with when I'm 5'5" and a woman on my own, away from my colleagues. But they've got these big backpacks. They haven't been scanned. They haven't been checked. And at that point, you're thinking, well, what's in there? You don't know. We're all checked. We're all scanned, and supposedly everyone's COVID checked. I think that was farcical. This is the biggest game that England have hosted in years, and it all just went so wrong. It's such a shame. Yeah.
So, sorry, Michelle, just because I'm not overly familiar with Wembley, how do they get in with their bags without being scanned? Because you would have assumed that after they break down the barriers, that there is another couple of checks at least before somebody in a backpack gets into the stadium.
Yeah, so when I've been as a fan, it's a bit different as media, but you still get your bag scanned. You still have to go through 2 or 3 checkpoints as media. But when I've been as a fan before, you usually get your bag scanned once. So what they would have done is where those turnstiles are. The bag checkpoint is by the turnstile, so you sort of go through both. You take your bag off, security scan it, and you go through the buzzer, and then you go through the turnstile. But they were coming in such big waves, they were just knocking everyone down in front of them. So it was just brute force, really. Or they'd tailgate someone with a ticket, they just tailgate on the turnstile behind them. We saw that happening. But it was just sheer sort of power and force. If they had a backpack on, that wasn't going to be checked, was it, if they were just running through? It's just, speaking about it out loud, it just seems so crazy that it even happens. You know, before the game, I was saying to my husband, I was like, if we can find some tickets online, do you want to come with Zach, who is 20 months old, our little boy? I will never take him to an England game of that magnitude until he's old enough to handle himself. And even then, I'd be worried. And my husband saw it sort of all unfolding on TV, and he was, like, worried about my safety. So you sat there in the final, and I'm half English and half Welsh, and naturally, I really wanted England to win. But I remember sitting there about 60, 70 minutes thinking, gosh, I don't know, like, if I should go home or not. You know, that's really, you're thinking there's so many unchecked people in here, and if it had been full capacity, which thankfully it wasn't, I just dread to think what the consequences could have been. I've heard from friends that were behind the goal, the England end, there's a massive crush, and from about 7:30 onwards, they just couldn't even get out to get to the toilet. It was that busy, or to get a drink, and that would have been very scary. I think I was a bit more fortunate where I was, but there's stories like that all over the grounds. It's just, horrible.
It doesn't bode well for a World Cup bid, does it?
Yeah, this is what you've got to be thinking, because the real genuine fans like myself would love nothing better than a World Cup in the UK. But I don't know. I mean, I think we're Ireland thinking of coming in on that bid as well. I'm not quite sure of the ins and outs of it, but if anyone's thinking of teaming up with England for that bid, are you questioning it now? I don't know. I wouldn't like to speak too much about it, because for real fans, it would be a dream to have a World Cup in this country. It's something in my lifetime we've never seen. But behaving like that, and it is the minority, but the minority are so aggressive and so loud, it gets to the point where, particularly as a woman, you don't feel comfortable at a football match. When we left, my cameraman, who's probably 6'5", he literally just shielded me to get to the car. It wasn't too bad coming out, but we left straight away. Got in the car and got out really quickly, but people were like thumping on my car, and I was just locking the door. You know, this is not the society we expect to live in, and this is even without talking about what's happened to the players and the racist abuse. It's just, there's the stuff online which is abhorrent, and now there's the stuff in person which is terrible.
Yeah, it's pretty grim all round. Michelle, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us this morning. It's no fun to speak about, but it's kind of important that people get a sense of what it was actually like to be there. Yeah,
I mean, I don't want to take anything away from this England team, because I think they've done brilliantly. And the irony is they stand for the opposite. And Gareth Southgate, in the letter he wrote at the start of the tournament, we know everyone around the world has had a really tough time. And for everyone taking part, it was a bit of a relief and a release, we thought. So I think England, as a team, stand for everything that we should all stand for. I thought they were fantastic.
Michelle, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Thanks. Cheers.
It's Michelle Owen there, a football broadcaster, who's covering the game for ITV and was at Wembley on Sunday. So should we team up with the English FA for a bid for the World Cup? Is that the right thing for us to do right now at this moment? I don't know. I mean, I suppose you've got to weigh up everything, right? Given that it's going to be a World Cup with 6 million teams who qualify, do the 4 host nations automatically get in, and therefore do you decide, well, the opportunity to play in a World Cup, we police the hell out of it, you get in forewarned is forearmed, and you get in loads of extra security, and you just make sure that everybody gets scanned properly for all the matches, and actually if there's going to be problems, it's not going to be here, it's going to be somewhere else. I don't know. Is that the risk-benefit analysis that you make?
Yeah, like I don't know. I think that what happened over the course of the last couple of days almost screams a level of arrogance from England. So you take the 2018 World Cup, for example. Beforehand, there was almost a preview of the trouble that was going to erupt between English fans and Russian fans. People were terrified about going to that World Cup. I don't remember any real problems. I remember John Duggan being on the show saying things are pretty normal. Like, there may have been some sort of reason, there may have been a really big security clampdown in the build-up to it. I suspect there was, to ensure that there wasn't any trouble. For the English government, for people who organise security services, to not see this coming is remarkable, given that there is a precedent at the previous football tournament to have actually got this thing under control, where there was an expectation where things would have got out of control. I don't know. Like, I mean, maybe the English government would have needed, like, maybe they would have wanted it to be an English-Russia final for them to actually take action. Maybe they don't realise what their own fans can do, or how much their own fans have been the cause of the trouble we've seen in France in 2016 in particular. That do they think that this is some other country's problem, that it's the hooligans from other countries that have got the worst out of English fans? Do they not know the reality of what happens within their own ranks? Because it just screams arrogance or naivety, just or a lack of awareness about what a huge amount of English fans are capable of doing. And like, I think right now it will be reputation suicide to get into bed with this English regime or football tournament organisational level. Like, I can't see the Irish people getting behind this at all. Maybe you cool the jets for a while, a few months, something gets ironed out, but what are you going to do? First of all, this thing is dead in the water from the evidence of the last couple of days. It's not going to be forgotten too soon. It is just such an automatic own goal for football to allow this bid to progress, at least with Qatar. I mean, who knows what sort of benefits might have been on the table for all the different sort of things that FIFA and UEFA have done down through the lines. What's in it for UEFA and FIFA this time to give the World Cup to Wembley, the World Cup final to Wembley? Nothing, absolutely nothing. So I think it would be stupid for Ireland to get on board with this.
It's 9:01 this morning. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. We've loads still to come on the show. We're going to hear from Martin Lipton. We're going to hear from Kevin Kilbane. We're going to get some of your reviews across as well. We've bunched them all together and do some from the YouTube comments, and also you can use the hashtag OTBAM. One other thing that we just need to talk about is that it looks like Alun Wyn Jones, it had been floated last week that Alun Wyn Jones' recovery from his shoulder injury was going so well that he might be a candidate to return to the Lions tour, and that would be in time for the test. The first test is 11 days away now at this stage. And so that does pose the question, who will captain the Lions? Is Conor Murray, because he's been there the whole time, automatic captain for the first test, assuming he's picked and he's fit to do so? Or if Alun Wyn Jones is the tour captain and goes home injured but comes back, does he come back as captain? What's the answer?
I don't know. Is there precedent for this? I'd like to know if there was. I don't think there is, because
I think in the past, if you left the tour, you left the tour.
Yeah, and if you had an injury, somebody would be named temporary captain, and maybe that temporary captain would eventually see out the whole thing. That would be the sensible thing to do. It really does speak to how remarkable this recovery is, because if Gatland thought there was any chance of Alun Wyn Jones coming back for the tests when the injury occurred, he probably would have used the word temporary with regards to Conor Murray, or placeholder, or something along those lines. So I do wonder that if Alun Wyn Jones comes back, I wonder, is Gatland Uber aware of that and is like, well, we've given Conor Murray the captaincy now, he's got to stay captain, because it's kind of like a little bit awkward for him now to see the captain walking back into the dressing room when it does eventually happen, and for him to be captain, it's a very, very unusual situation.
Yeah, what would you do?
I think that you kind of have to let Murray have it now, since you've named him as captain. I think that you've kind of made your bed a little bit, and I think that's what I would do. It's a really awkward one, and I don't know if Conor Murray's going to be starting the tests. If Alun Wyn Jones comes back and proves himself as fully fit, he's probably going to be starting the tests. They're both probably going to be starters if everybody's fully fit. Maybe Alun Wyn Jones comes in and isn't 100% immediately, and maybe misses the first test or something. In that world, then it's an easier pass on Alun Wyn Jones. It's easier to say, well, Conor Murray started the tour when we got to the tests phase, and he's been captain, so we're going to continue as we started. I think that maybe is the reality of how it might go. Yeah,
so Murray starts the tests as captain.
Yes.
And then you play it by ear.
I think so.
Can you stick Alun Wyn Jones straight in the team?
So that's what I'm saying. I think that happening in the first test isn't overly likely, is it? If we're still, so a decision's going to have to be made today. really. I think we're going to get clarity on this today. You say, what, 11 days out from the first test? Can a person come in and 10 days later, after travel is done, actually compete in the first test? If anybody can do it, it's Alun Wyn Jones, in fairness. And he's not going to be flying unless he's good to go. But maybe there is a situation here where he's flying because he knows that he'll be a really valuable asset come test 2 and test 3. And that maybe the first test could just come a little bit too early for him, even though he will be in and around the camp. So I could see that happening, where he doesn't start the first test and Conor Murray does start the first test. He is then captain for the tests and he keeps it, regardless of whether or not Alun Wyn Jones plays the second test.
Yeah. You can't strip the captaincy. It's not stripping the captaincy, though. It is a hugely unusual situation. And I guess if you named Alun Wyn Jones captain, if he's playing and he's fit, then he has to captain the team, though.
But he's back.
He's back.
He's ex-captain. Like Conor, here's the fact. Conor Murray is the captain of the British and Irish Lions. Alun Wyn Jones is not the captain of the British and Irish Lions. That is a fact. So you are stripping Conor Murray of the captaincy when Alun Wyn Jones comes back into it. Even though Alun Wyn Jones was the initial choice, he's not captain anymore. It is awkward. It's really awkward because does he walk in and is like, Warren, where's my armband, mate? I know they don't wear armbands, but where is it? Like or first penalty, Alun Wyn Jones and Conor Murray both walk up to the referee and they're like,
it's me.
Just step aside, Conor.
Yeah. Or
you're probably not going to push Alun Wyn Jones back in that situation. You're not going to be like.
I don't know. Alun Wyn Jones was more a thoughtful leader, I would have said, than brute force. No.
But he's still a second row, and Conor Murray's a scrum half.
Yeah, well,
Conor Murray's a tall scrum half, in fairness.
He's not going to catch you. If you punch him and run.
It's true. it's very true. I think it's Murray's. I'm gonna for a situation that we don't know the answer to whatsoever.
Have you seen the other thing? Is obviously they've named this very, very strong South Africa A side with one South African I follow on Twitter was saying it's 9 or 10 of the starters, or maybe 8 or 9 of the actual test starters in the team, and Rassie Rasmus has been ratcheting up the pressure on Gatland, saying, well, we could play another A team at the weekend again. I'm sure the lads wouldn't be scared of that, would they? They wouldn't be too cowardly to face our A team and give us a better opportunity of actually being ready for the first test. And also, it would keep our not quite secure biosphere secure as possible. Gatland's like, not playing them. Not doing it. Absolutely no way. What do you do? Do you be as gamesmanship? Do you be as much of a shithouse as you can? Is that what you do?
If you're the South African players,
if you're everybody in this situation. So clearly, it's in the South Africans' interest to play the South Africa A, start a lot of fights, punch, gouge, bite. Do the same again at the weekend. Yeah. Get as many of your test starters. Don't be them the ones doing the gouging, biting, and punching. Use the other ones.
Just bring Scott Berger along if you're out of retirement.
It's like, yeah. But if you're Gatland, you're like, absolutely, we will not play your A team. No, we came here on the understanding these were the fixtures. You shortened it. You made it as biased in your favour as possible. Come on, tough luck.
I think if you're on the South African side of things, you are absolutely trying to rough up the opposition as much as possible. I think Rassie as well is trying to stir the pot a little bit on a couple of occasions. You mentioned it there with the Alun Wyn Jones thing as well. He was
on a kind of
quite early, he had the news quite early on Alun Wyn Jones, and it was almost as if Gatland's hand was forced in terms of answering questions on it. So Rassie knows what he's doing. Rassie's a very smooth operator, and everything we hear from him publicly is a very deliberate thing. So this is a fascinating little wrinkle over the next couple of days about how this team actually approaches the game, because we've seen it before. I mean, Ireland know a thing or two about having a warm-up game that can be a bit of a war. The Lions themselves obviously know a thing about a warm-up game that can be a bit of a war. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a few walking wounded this time next week, and that could be suspension-wise or it could be injuries.
It's 9:09 this morning. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Here's what's on OTB Sports Radio today. At 1 o'clock, it's OTB Gold, The Ascent from Barry Ryan. There's a Dadcast from 3. A career retrospective with Jim Beglin at 4 o'clock. OTB Gold at 6 is Ray Boom Boom Mancini. And from 7 o'clock, the The show is live tonight on OTB Sports Radio. You can listen to OTB Sports Radio throughout the day on your desktop over on otbsports.com or on the OTB Sports app. That's the best place to get it. You just click the radio button and it will come on. I better not do that because it might come on again. 10 minutes past 9. Quick break. Back talking with Martin Lipton.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The football pod with Paddy and Andy.
If the opposition can't smell blood this year, we're as well pack it in, because even if Cumberford's kickouts are as good as Cluxton's, every team is taking a step forward.
Download the OTB Sports app and subscribe to the GAA podcast feed now.
Sean, what's that thing going round the garden?
That is our new Husqvarna auto mower.
Auto mower?
Yeah, it's a robotic lawnmower from Husqvarna. Cuts the grass automatically, has GPS tracking and an app. Even works in the rain. I just thought, why spend time cutting grass when I could spend it with the family?
Great! You can put the dinner on, so...
No can do, love. Have to paint the man cave.
Husqvarna auto mower. Never mow again. Learn more at husqvarna.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
So, sports pages for you. We can start with otbsports.com. Kevin Kilbane coping with a penalty miss and Southgate's crazy strategy. I can score penalties in my sleep. Rashford apologises for defeat. England's Tyrone Mings claims Priti Patel stoked the fire of racist abuse. WWE Hall of Famer Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff dies aged 71. And Lions cancellation could collapse professional rugby in South Africa. That was Craig Ray speaking on the show last night. The lead on the Irish Times this morning is Southgate reluctant to extend his contract. Johnson seeks moral high ground despite pivotal role in divisive culture war. From Gigi to Gigio, Italy have found a worthy heir to Buffon in Donnarumma, who was player of the tournament there. And we also have loads of golf previews because the Open is upon us, and the official handing over the claret jug will have happened. Shane Larry will have given it back, obviously, since he won it at Portrush. There's a picture of him on the front of the Examiner, Mr. Entertainer. The Daily Mirror, we don't want you, Kane tells racists. The Star back page is enemy at the gates, and it's an open house policy for Lowry. Southgate Saka penalty call surprised teammates, says the Irish Independent lead story with Matt Law. And Conor Murray, I'll fill the number 10 role if needed. So that's him saying, I can do the job of captain and number 10. The London Times, Wembley yobs target England stars' families. And it turned out, as I was saying a little bit earlier on, Roberto Mancini's son couldn't take his own seat in the ground. The Irish Daily Mail, on a rampage, ticketless yobs threatened and abused families of England stars, and Lowry ready to defend his up ground. We'll do golf in more detail, obviously, on tomorrow. We'll preview that with Nathan and Joe later on in the week as well. The Herald, Saka surprise for spot kick, and they've also got a picture of the Italian fans crowding the streets of Rome. Lowndes' exit leaves Dublin defence a bit thin for Semi, is the story there. Now, let's move on, because we're going back to the situation with regards to the England football team, and I'm delighted to say that Martin Lipton is with us this morning. Martin, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm okay, actually, yes. I'm going to go to Tokyo tomorrow, so I've got another run to Heathrow to get another COVID test this morning, but that's the nature of international travel these days.
Right. So no time to sit and dwell and lick the spiritual wounds, or are you actually thinking, semi-final in the World Cup, finalists here, the progression is good, we're getting there, this is a time to be positive? Is your glass half full, I guess I'm asking?
It is, but it was. I said after Moscow that it was the beginning and not the end for that England team. Now we've reached the middle, not the end. And I genuinely believe that. I thought Italy would win the game because they're better. They proved to be better. It was the correct result, no question of that, even though it ended up going down to a couple of kicks from 12 yards. But the improvement in England is going to continue. There's no doubt about that. I reflect back to Germany. Semi-final, final, semi-final, semi-final before they won. Sometimes you need to learn to lose before you learn to win. England are in that cycle now. The fact is, it's 2 successive, if you include the Nations League, 3 successive semi-finals. That's never happened before.
So what needs to happen to accelerate the process to turn them from a team who can take on an Italy or a Spain in the final and go, actually, we are better than you and we deserve to win?
But you don't need to be better than them to deserve to win. You can just sometimes win. But what they do need is the ability to to react slightly more under pressure. The one thing that it was better for me was the second half was, for the first 25 minutes, eerily reminiscent of the Croatia semi-final. The difference was that in that Croatia semi-final, once Croatia scored the equaliser, there was never any doubt over who was going to win. Croatia were going to win the match. You can't say that on Sunday, because Southgate, albeit maybe somewhat belatedly, did make changes and did restore balance, parity, maybe even England, you could argue, shaded the last 35 minutes or so, which is an improvement. But they were forced back by the sheer relentlessness of the Italian midfield and attack, and they couldn't find a way out. They need to be able to change the game so that they have breathing, they create the breathing space. In the first half, England were unquestionably the better team. Over the 120 minutes, in my book, Italy were unquestionably the better team. But the gap between England and Italy is far narrower than the gap between England and Croatia 3 years ago. And Italy are a better team than Croatia.
So is it a personnel issue? Is it a tactical approach? Is it flexibility? Is it change on the side? And what is that bit that's...
Everything, and including maturity of the team and the manager. Look, there will be changes in that team by the time England, if they qualify, and I think they will, get to Qatar. I think Bellingham will become a focal point of the team, which changes the dynamic of the team, because not only can he be a defensive midfielder, but he can also join and he can pass. He can move the ball, progress it with his feet rather than with his legs, as it were. The link really wasn't there. A lot of England's stuff was having to run with the ball, which is good in itself on occasions, but also you need to be able to pass it a bit better. And that was the issue there. They couldn't pass their way out of trouble other than just banging it long, which of course invited the pressure back. But also the likes of Foden, who would have probably come on as a substitute had he been fit to play earlier. Probably Foden would have come on when Sacco did, I suspect, in the game if he were available. The likes of Sancho and many of these other boys are going to get better and better just through the natural maturity, evolution, ageing process. If you're in your early 20s, you're not the player you are in your mid and late 20s. We know that, particularly if your game isn't solely based on pace. These players are technical football players. They're not just about how quick they can run.
Is Gareth Southgate too conservative?
Well, he looked at the model that won Portugal and France the last two tournaments and decided to replicate that. And it took him to the final. People weren't saying that Didier Deschamps was too conservative when he lost to a Portugal team without Ronaldo in the final of 2016. He just stuck to his guns and won the World Cup. Sometimes, as I've said before, the same answer did gain a power, must it maintain? You can tweak, but why would you throw everything out of, the baby out with the bathwater? Sometimes it's not that bad. And they've got to, as I said, semi-final and final with a team that's still finding its feet at international level.
I think that's true, and I think that there's a danger, maybe not a danger, but one of the worries you might have is that the outside noise does ratchet up a little bit, and that something... that an overreaction happens. And I see there's talk about Gareth Southgate and where his contract is in terms of after Qatar, but he clearly is still the right man for the job, and I think that obviously things will be renewed next year and there'll be a greater discussion after that World Cup. But I would like to think that everybody within the FA sees the direction in which this team is going, Martin. There's no danger that something weird happens over the next little while, is there?
No, not a chance. They're fully bought into Southgate and what he brings. And they want, whatever happens, Southgate will be wanted to be help guide the future. Whether it be, when it comes to his successor, they will take counsel from Gareth Southgate. They recognise that Gareth and Trevor Brooking are two of the prime architects of this England team. Not so much the players who they select now, it's the fact that the culture that they brought in at ground level, at grassroots level, small-sided games, playing through the thirds, playing in a different way, not going back to the old English boot it and let's see what happened and hurrah and patriotism and we're stronger. No, you win by being smarter. That's how you play. And if you look across the whole of, I'm sure it's elsewhere in Europe as well, but particularly in England, you go on any football pitch on a Saturday, Sunday morning and watch the kids. They're all more skillful at 6 than kids were at 16, 20 years ago. They're taught to love the ball. Now, if all of the players are doing that, from the lowest 3, 4, 5-year-olds upwards, of course, by the time they get to 18, 20, 25, it's more than second nature. It's utterly instinctive. It's what they do. So you are putting the building block for success from the early age. And clearly, the results of the last few years and the number of English players playing for the bigger English teams, that's a really good sign. Look at the Champions League final, how many English players. Even 10 years ago, look at the United Chelsea final in 2008. There were far fewer percentile English players than there were in Chelsea v Man City.
It's all a bit mad when you think that Sam Allardyce could still be the England manager if, he hadn't had the pint of wine.
But we'll never know, will we? I mean, look, they'd have gone to Russia, potentially got sploshed by Algeria and
maybe
and everybody else, and gone out in the group stage and been sacked. Who knows? I mean, it's ifs and ands, isn't it? You can't imagine what didn't happen. Well, you can, but there's no point in that.
I guess I'm saying that they were lucky that Southgate, obviously they had positioned Southgate there for at some point in the future he was the, in case of emergency, break glass option, but they were lucky, I guess, that he got the gig when he did get the gig, and he was the right man at that point.
Yeah, he was. It needed a step change. He brought it, and who will never know what an Allardyce reign would have brought. He's far more scientific than people believe. However, I don't think he'd have been quite as unifying a force within the squad as Southgate has unquestionably proven to be. And I also think he'd have been more naturally conservative in terms of the players he selected, not necessarily the playing style, but the personnel.
Yeah, it is interesting to consider what that team might have looked like and who wouldn't be in the team, who might be in the team. In terms of the selection issues and the penalties, all that kind of stuff comes under a very severe microscope in the aftermath of a defeat. Is any of it important? Are there significant lessons for Southgate to learn and think, actually, I should have done something differently? Maybe somebody else should have been taking the fifth penalty? Or is that all hindsight journalism and largely the type of thing that, as a manager, you build for the next time, but they're just mistakes? Some teams are going to lose a penalty.
The Americans have a brilliant phrase for it, don't they? The Monday morning quarterback. Anyone could be wise after the event. I'll just put a few names to you. Franco Baresi, Zinedine Zidane, Roberto Baggio, Michel Platini. What have they got in common?
Well,
missed penalties in shootouts. There you go. Statistically, historically, the suggestion is actually the younger the player, the less likely it is for them to miss because they're not burdened by the weight of history when they step up. But sometimes it doesn't work out right. Jordan Pickford, Jorginho, who is probably the best penalty taker in the Premier League, missed the penalty to win the tournament, to win it. If Sacco scores, Italy is crucifying Jorginho for missing the penalty, because that's what happens in football. I mean, the best thing for England, I guess, is it was 3 players who missed. There isn't one scapegoat. You can't blame 3. It's not worth it. Well, some idiots will because they're idiots, not because they understand football. Sometimes you just miss. But I would say that if these 3 boys who missed are all incredibly strong characters, even at their very tender ages. And the proof of that is what they do off the pitch. Rashford being able to take on and bring the government to heel twice. Sancho going away at 17, telling City, no, you don't play me, I'm going to leave, and going and ending up becoming an £80 million player 3 years later, whilst investing a huge amount of money in his local community in South London. And Saka, the boy from Greenford, straight A student, bright as a button, perfect exemplar of what English society should be, a meritocratic society. From West London, making it in North London, being an England international at 19. That's what you want. And I these are big, strong boys. They're young. They'll be back. They'll be back.
We've been talking about it all morning because obviously the bid for the 2030 World Cup is supposed to be a joint bid with the Irish FA and the other FAs. There's definitely questions being asked on this side of the water about what's going to happen in the aftermath of what happened at Wembley. Is there a long-term damage to any potential bid by the fact that ticketless fans were able to access the European Championship finals?
Well, if there is, then the South American bid must be destroyed because of the damage caused before the Copa Libertadores final the other year. Money talks, finances talk. The issue is, does a British Isles bid get the support of Ceferin and UEFA over the Spanish-Portuguese bid? If not, it doesn't matter anyhow. If so, then they've got a chance, unless they decide to ignore UEFA and plead to Infantino and get his support because the South American bid doesn't win. And also, if China bid, China win anyhow, so it won't matter.
So you don't think this has any political ramifications?
I don't think it helps. I think the images of Sunday afternoon and Sunday morning, in fact, the whole night, were despicable, disgusting, outrageous, a slur, a genuine badge of shame for the country. And I mean that. Those what I witnessed on television was utterly beyond belief. It was so bad. I speaking to people who were there and listening to them, it was probably even worse if you were in it. It was disgusting, and it's a shame. It was shameful, but unfortunately, we're not the only country which has shameful acts perpetrated by some small number of individuals. Worry, I guess, is that there were too many of them. The policing was woefully, and the stewarding and the ticketing and the organisation was also woefully inadequate. That is not in any way meant to justify or condone, because I would like every single one of those people to be banned from anywhere near a football stadium for the rest of their lives. I really would. Unfortunately, I don't have that power.
Do you think that will happen? Because the outrage is look.
Well, there's CCTV. They should be able to identify them.
Yeah, a lot of CCTV.
And they'll know if they had a ticket or not, because they have a database of ticket holders. So anyone they can identify who went into that stadium, clearly didn't have a ticket, or who they know clearly didn't have a ticket, they should be able to try and identify, and then the court should come in and ban them. Now, legally, I think they're only allowed to ban for 3 years, but I think that you can always rush through emergency legislation.
How important is the 2030 bid, Martin, and how much of an effort will there be over the next little while to, as you say, I guess, ratchet up the necessary political things you got to do in order to make this thing happen?
Well, there's lots of elements to it. First, you've got to give FIFA everything they want and more, and there needs to be political will for that. My understanding, actually, from talking to people within the FA, is that there's far greater motivation and desire to bid for the tournament from the UK government than there necessarily is from the FA. They'll go along with it and they won't be opposed, but they're not going to bid unless they think they can win. And they've got political intelligence out there trying to ascertain the reality. I said, if China are allowed to bid, there's no point, because Infantino wants to give it to China. And Infantino, while he doesn't have the support of UEFA or probably CONMEBOL, he has everybody else in his pocket. And he only needs 105 votes to win. Less than that if the UK bid, because none of the 5 nations can actually then vote under the rules. So there are those aspects too. I think everyone within English football would love to see British football, actually. British Isles football has expanded into Ireland, because it would be great to have games at the Aviva and at Croke Park. It would be great to have teams training in Northern Ireland. It'd be great to have games at Handham and Hampton and Murrayfield and Ibrox. It'd be great to have games at Cardiff, and fantastic to have games the length and breadth of England. But there's more to it than that.
Yeah, the fact that we're all going to be watching games in winter in Qatar suggests there's a lot more to it than that. And
it's a different system then, to be fair. We can't, whilst I'm not exactly always the greatest fan of Infantino, a vote of the entire Congress is different to a vote of 22 people in a room, because if you're going to be really cynical, it costs more to buy off 100 people than it does to buy off 11.
I can see the maths already being done in certain regimes around the world. Oh, we've still got loads of money.
But I'm not sure that anyone's got the money anymore, actually.
Maybe some people do. You're heading to the Olympics, obviously.
Yes.
And covering everything, or is it?
Yeah, oh God! I mean, I am all things to all men. I'm going to prove my ability to cover every sport really badly.
Right.
To be fair, I'm very good at covering one sport really badly, so I'm now going to expand what Ken Bates once described as my sphere of incompetence.
What's the setup going to be, Martin? Are you going to get to any events? Is it like shuttles and a very biosecure bus to venues?
It's very. I mean, I've got to. So I go Wednesday night. I then have to do 4 nights in hotel quarantine, which is strict hotel quarantine. For the first 10 days after that, I'm not allowed outside of the Olympic corridor. I have to go in shuttles. If they're not there, they have to put on private taxis for me, which are Olympic-only taxis. I'm not allowed into restaurants. I'm only allowed into convenience stores if I'm in and out in 30 odd seconds and don't look at the noodles before I eat them, whatever it might be. After 14 nights, I'm treated as a local. So I'm allowed into restaurants, just they're all shutting at 7 o'clock, so I won't be able to get in them because I'll still be working. So it's going to be a rather restricted and somewhat sterile experience, but I can get to the venues, and there will be, allegedly, at least mixed zones to talk to the athletes. So I think the numbers will be heavily restricted, and mainly TV crews with a handful of written press journalists like myself who'll have to pull the quotes, which is absolutely reasonable and understandable. And then there'll be the formal press conferences afterwards. But a lot will be done on Zoom. It will have to be, not ideal. And I think it will be a very sterile environment for the athletes. But at the same time, for many of them, this is their one chance of taking part in an Olympics, or one chance of an Olympic medal. I understand the worries and fears of the Japanese people. I feel for them hugely, but I also feel that the athletes deserve their day in the sun.
Martin, good stuff. Enjoy it. Thanks a million for joining us over the course of the Euros as well. Cheers.
Cheers. Take care. Bye-bye.
It's Martin Lipton giving us some thoughts on the fallout from England's defeat on penalties. You can give us your views in the YouTube comments, and you are, and we thank you for that. You can also use the hashtag OTBAM, or of course you can tweet us at Off The Ball. OTBAM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Tomorrow morning we'll continue our Lions build-up. Obviously there is a game tomorrow evening which we'll bring you live on Off The Ball. We'll have a Deal or No Deal with Nathan and Phil, and much more besides as well. Kevin Kilbane was in rare form on last night's football show. Sit back, relax, grab your coffee, enjoy.
You may have noticed Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, the Tory Home Secretary. About 2 weeks ago she was doing a big interview and she was effectively defending the rights of English fans to boo the taking of the knee. She called the taking of the knee nothing more than gesture politics, didn't agree with it, and it certainly didn't condemn any English fan who booed the English players taking the knee. So about 12 hours ago, Priti Patel tweeted, and she said, "I'm disgusted the England players who have given so much for our country this summer have been subject to vile racist abuse on social media. Has no place in our country." And the hypocrisy surrounding Patel and her support of the team as they've become more successful during this tournament has been fairly apparent, I think, to most people, including Tyrone Mings, who saw her tweet and has quote tweeted her tweet and said, "You don't get to stoke the fire at the beginning of the tournament by labelling our anti-racism message as gesture politics and then pretend to be disgusted when the very thing we're campaigning against happens." So he's up to 250,000 likes and counting by the second at the moment, and 10,000 quote tweets, 72,000 retweets, and I'm sure Priti Patel is aware of the fact she's trending on Twitter, so she has tried to play that both ways, and Tyrone Mings has called her out spectacularly here, you would have to say. And then the other tweet just in the last while, which again is catching the eye, is Marcus Rashford. I'm sure people were interested to see what he's made of the last 24 hours. So Rashford, it's quite a long one. I'll just read it out to you. "I don't even know where to start. I don't even know how to put this into words or tell you how I'm feeling at this exact time. I've had a difficult season. I think that's been clear for everyone to see. I probably went into that final with a lack of confidence. I've always backed myself for a penalty, but something didn't feel quite right. During the long run-up, I was saving myself a bit of time, and unfortunately the result was not what I wanted. It felt as though I'd let my teammates down, felt as if I'd let everyone down. A penalty was all I'd been asked to contribute for the team. I can score penalties in my sleep, so why not that one? It's been playing in my head over and over since I struck the ball. There's probably not a word to describe how it feels. First final in 55 years, one penalty, history. All I can say is sorry. I wish it had gone differently. Whilst I continue to say sorry, I want to shout out to my teammates. This summer has been one of the best camps I've experienced. You've all played a role in that. A brotherhood has been built. That's unbreakable. Your success is my success. Your failures are mine. I've grown up in a sport where I expect to read things written about myself, whether it be the colour of my skin, where I grew up, or most recently, how I decide to spend my time off the pitch. I can take critiques of my performance all day long. My penalty was not good enough. It should have gone in, but I'll never apologise for who I am and where I come from. I've felt no prouder moment than wearing these 3 lines on my chest, seeing my family cheer for me in a crowd of tens of thousands. I dreamt of days like this." And then finally, he references the mural in Withington. So you may have seen this. There is a mural of him in Withington, which was defaced earlier on with the kind of language you can imagine, and it was very grinned is where he's from, obviously. And we've just put a picture up if you're streaming on the show. A bunch of the locals went out and wrote loads of messages and cut out hearts of various colours and put it all over the mural. So he says, the messages I've received today have been overwhelmingly positive. Seeing the response in Withington had me on the verge of tears. The communities that always wrap their arms around me continue to hold me up. I'm Marcus Rashford, 23 years old, black man from Withington, South Manchester. If I have nothing else, I have that. For all the kind messages, thank you. I'll be back stronger. We'll be back stronger, Marcus. Kevin Kilbane, you're very welcome.
Hi, Joe. How are you keeping?
Yeah, very well, very well. So it's all going off there on Twitter between Priti Patel and Tyrone Mings, and then Marcus Rashford. Extraordinary post on his social media page there. It is quite moving when you see the response of the locals in Withington, the vast majority of locals coming out, supporting him, letting him know that ultimately, hopefully, the racists are in the minority.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he represents a multicultural Britain, doesn't he? I think maybe... I think listening to him there talking about the pride he's got in his country, wearing the three lions and all this sort of thing, I think it must get into his head a little bit, and the black players in particular. And I'm not just talking about this year, I'm talking about my era when I played, even the era before me. I saw a tweet from Dion Dublin there today talking about the racist chants that English players have received for... since Viv Anderson played, what was that, late 70s, early 80s, when Viv Anderson made his England debut. It's not a new thing. It's crazy in my eyes when the lads talk about playing with pride for your country, when they've all received racist abuse for playing for the country. And it's certainly not representative of them or the families. It's not representative of a majority, but that minority will always come to the fore, won't it? It'll always come out, and it'll always have its voice. And it's sad that those players, I looked at the penalty takers yesterday, Sancho, Rashford and Saka, all black players, all being racially abused online. It's never been acceptable, but it seems like through social media it's actually acceptable in some quarters on there. And it's disgusting on every level. Let's be honest now, it's disgusting on every level, Joe. But I think for those players having pride in playing for your country and receiving that, I don't know, there's got to be a conflict there. There has to be a conflict within their own mind, I'd feel at times. I mean, everybody knows my background and where I've come from. I grew up in England. I grew up in maybe a society through the 70s, late 70s, when I was born, through the 80s, when I always felt it was very much a racist Britain I was growing up into. Very much anti-Irish is what I felt as a kid. I feel as though I had no connection with that country whatsoever, even though I grew up there. So it's not surprising to me these lads are receiving these racial abuse, these racial taunts, Joe. It isn't, because it's something that I've experienced across my whole life when I grew up and lived in that country. And I think our game in general, Joe, I'll just make this point before I maybe go to it, but I don't have a problem with the lads taking the knee. I have a problem with that. It seems to me now that UEFA and FIFA, they're quite happy for all the players taking the knee, but are they actually getting behind the players who are taking the knee? Are they really doing that? Because what we're going to see across the course of the next few years, we'll see racial chanting in various parts of the world. We'll see homophobic chanting. We'll see whatever sort of discrimination chanting across the world. And we'll probably see stadium bans. We'll probably see crowds not being able to get into to watch the team playing. And it will be just a paltry fine that will be thrown at these teams without the authorities really getting behind the message that's being sent out. And this has been the case now for 10 or 15 years, Joe. You and I have, I don't know how many times you and I have spoke about this issue, because we have and will continue to speak about this issue. But are the real authorities, because I think our game has been incredible in dealing with issues internally. I grew up from, certainly when I was 16 when I left school, 93 when I first came into the professional environment, black players around me, players, Muslim players, whatever religion. It didn't have an effect on any one of the players in those dressing rooms that I was around. Yet it seems to have an effect on supporters, because this is continuously been an issue since I first started playing, and obviously when I was before my time when I was watching teams over in England. This is continuing to grow and gain momentum. And what's FIFA, what's UEFA doing about it? We saw UEFA, I think, for the tournament, particularly around the Christian Eriksen incident, where they acted disgracefully in my eyes. So, you know, they're not dealing with they're not particularly interested with the welfare of players. They're not particularly interested with the welfare of coaches, of various family members around the players. It's basically just try to get on with the show, keep the money ticking over. There's got to come a time when you draw a line under it, and they have to act properly, and they have to act severely, because we're just going to continue to talk about this subject if the authorities are not going to deal with it and deal with it in a manner that's acceptable, that I would feel. And that's where I feel on it, Joe.
Yeah, well said. To the game itself, to what extent did England leave this behind them then, Kev? The stats would suggest Italy dominated 64% possession. Ultimately, they had 19 shots to England's 6 from when really about 10, 15 minutes left with the first half onwards. They were in control of the game. England either gave it up control or Italy took it, maybe a mixture of both.
Yeah, well, you and I have watched Ireland over the last few years, haven't we? We've seen maybe this sort of pattern with what happened to England in the game: score early and try to sit on that lead throughout. If you look at England across the course of the tournament, they were uneventful. They did the job, didn't they? Let's be fair, they did the job. If you look at the knockout games against Germany, I don't think they were great against Germany, but they got the job done. And if you're winning games playing like that, it's all great. But when it doesn't go your way and you're playing the way that England have played throughout this tournament, particularly something that I'd spoken to you, Joe, in the lead up to the tournament, England have got, let's be fair now, they've got the best attacking players in world football, the depth of talent that they've got. There's nobody better than them. There's nobody that can have, you know, someone like a James Maddison not even involved in the squad. You know, James Maddison would probably get into every other nation's 26-man squad, wouldn't he? Let's be honest about that. You've got Rashford, you've got Sancho, you've got Foden. All these players, bit part roles really throughout the tournament. So Gareth Southgate simply didn't play to the team's strength, did he? I understand that he's probably looked at Euro winners in the past, and it's something that I'd heard through the week leading up to the final was he'd had big discussions with his coaching staff and with his core of scouts and everyone, the staff around the FA, regarding how teams win major tournaments. Is it about the defensive side of it? Maybe looking at Portugal and how they won in 2016 and various other teams. You know, it helps, of course, if you've got someone like Cristiano Ronaldo with Portugal doing it. But Portugal, by and large, sat off teams, sat behind the ball and tried to hit teams on the counter-attack. I looked at England, particularly in the knockout stages, and so often when I was seeing them going forward, and they were, you know, Sterling was fantastic, I felt, throughout the tournament. Kane came to life in maybe the last 2 or 3 games. But whenever they were getting into the final third of the pitch, Joe, again, it might not have been something that you picked up on, but they always had an extra 2 bodies back to the opposition's attacking players. So if the opposition, or whether it was Ukraine or whether it was Italy last night, if Italy had 2 men forward, England would have 4 men back, or 3 forward, they'd have 5 men. They always had it wasn't a 4-on-3 defensively, it was a 5-on-3. That's how England played. It was overcautious, I felt. Maybe Southgate didn't have particular trust in his defenders, because that was the weak link going into the tournament. That was how they were going to lose this tournament. It was about the defensive side, how I felt, maybe even the goalkeeper, who all actually performed very, very well. You can't say they didn't. But going forward, they were heavily reliant upon Sterling to carry the ball 50 yards up the pitch every single time he got the ball from deep line positions, when realistically, watching the Italy side for the first 20 minutes of the game, they were all over the place. They didn't know what was happening to them. They weren't able to keep control of the ball. England were dominating in every single way, and you felt if England just turned the screw a little bit, they were going to go and win that game very, very comfortably. But as soon as Verratti, I thought Verratti was just sensational. I really did. I thought he played so well. He recognised, I think, above anybody else on that pitch, that Italy were a little bit overrun. They hadn't had control of the ball. And just by taking an extra touch on the ball, maybe even by winning a foul for his team, he just settled everything down for Italy. Verratti was the difference, I felt, across the 90 minutes in getting Italy back into the game. Chiesa was another for different reasons, but I just felt how he controlled the game for them and how he settled everything down. Verratti sensed, I think, that they were struggling badly, and he was the one that was going to get them back into the game. So there's a number of issues, really, if you're looking at England, but I just think they didn't necessarily have the full belief. And maybe even Southgate as well was overcautious. I think Southgate was overcautious. He didn't really believe that his team could go and outplay Italy. And let's be honest, you look at the 1 to 11s, you maybe look at the 26-men squad, England have got better players than Italy. They simply have got better players. But I just felt that cautious approach, that approach of not really showing any conviction, it cost England in the end. And that's why they ultimately lost the tournament, because Italy, as they did against Spain, not playing particularly well against Spain, found a way to win and found a way to get over the line.
Yeah, to be honest, I would totally agree with you on all of that. And it's a big charge to level against Southgate. Like, he's had the best squad of the tournament potentially at his disposal, and a very attacking one at that. And he seems, as you said, to have just wedded himself to this notion that defence wins, pragmatism wins. That's how tournament football goes, and therefore he has not played to the strengths of this incredible squad. And the striking thing is, when you look at the attitude on display for their first goal, I was even mentioning to Pat Nevin earlier on, I don't know, was this just like the exuberance of the first few minutes where everyone's pumped up in adrenaline and they're going for it, but the ball, there was a bit of play left hand side and it broke into midfield and there was space, and Kyle Walker takes off and Trippier takes off, and ultimately the play develops and Kyle Walker goes from an underlap into an overlap around Trippier. It takes Emerson away. Trippier therefore is that extra bit of space to put in a brilliant cross, and lo and behold the other wing back pops up, and it's an extraordinary finish, in fairness to Shaw. So you had one of the central defenders overlapping the right wing back and the left wing back finishing off the move, and in that 40 seconds you thought, wow, these could be devastating. I thought they were going to win 3-0 at that stage. I thought Southgate had rope-a-doped everyone and they were going to go all-out attack. We are going to flood you. Think of the pace we have. And then they didn't have another shot on target in the next 130 minutes.
I know, that's exactly it. Joe, you know, I've always said maybe at times you don't read a game particularly well, maybe like Nathan, but I think you've read it perfectly there. I know, but Joey, it's exactly how it was. I thought England were going to go on and just totally dominate that game. They had the players to do it. I think they had players playing well in that first 20 minutes as well. Looked full of confidence, taking the ball. Kane, very, very good.
Declan Rice, brilliant all game, in fairness to him, most of the game. Harry Kane, the first 20 minutes was incredible.
Unbelievable. Because I don't know if you saw, Joe, I did a bit of analysis actually over here on Bonucci and Chiellini up against Harry Kane. There was a couple of incidents in the game. Kane's dropped off. There was one incident where Bonucci goes in tight with him. Harry Kane popped it off first time. Bonucci, with the mentality that he's got, get back alongside Chiellini. Stability. Kane then receives the ball. I think it's Barella comes over. He skips away from Barella because Barella's then out of position trying to get back. There was an opening up on the right-hand side where I think it was actually Trippier got in. Kane played Trippier in across to the far post, and De Lorenzi gives a corner away. You could clearly see they were frightened to death of Harry Kane. Harry Kane's positioning was frightening Chiellini and Bonucci so much that they didn't want to step in. But all of a sudden then, as the game progressed, Harry Kane started playing up against them. And you could see what happened. Bonucci and Chiellini had a field day. They were smashing into the back of him. Kane wasn't really getting fouls. Kuipers, the referee, was quite content just to go, I'm going to let this game go. He'd obviously had a message that England had been diving a little bit. They had been, no matter what anyone says. Kane was diving an awful lot in this tournament. Raheem Sterling, maybe for the penalty that he won in the semi-final. Was it a dive? Wasn't it a dive? Whatever side you come of it, Kuipers had obviously watched England, and he had thought in his head, I'm not going to give Kane all these fouls. I'm not going to give Sterling all these fouls. So there was a lot of fouls I felt that England should have got that they actually didn't get because of what had happened in the tournament. So Chiellini then and Bonucci just felt as though we can go right up against him. We can go and smash him from behind. Yeah. And they had a field day. They enjoyed the game because it was their type of game then.
That's a great point. Yeah.
I don't know what happened with him. I don't know what happened with how that game progressed. I don't know what Southgate had said at half-time because, as you say, Chiesa did something 5 minutes before half-time, Joe, where he picked up the ball, he got away from Rice, had a shot. It was a comfortable enough. I think Pickford had it covered. But these were little turning points in the game where Chiesa came to life second half and throughout the time. It was incredible.
Yeah, that Chiellini, Kane, Bonucci point is fascinating. I didn't see that analysis. We don't get the old Toronto TV over here, Kev. Sorry.
It's not Toronto TV, Joe. It's Canada. You know.
Oh, excuse me, sir. You're national. You're national. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Bloody hell. What's the population of Canada?
I think it's about 40 million. I think.
Check you out.
I think I know. I do believe they have the biggest audience here because they wanted England-Italy final.
Okay.
You know, I think there's 1.5 million Italians in Canada, or of Italian descent, and a lot of obviously English descent as well. So they had I think they had the perfect final, or we had the perfect final over here.
And the Kevin Kilbane bounce. I mean, it's the Holy Trinity, and it's a ratings winner.
I don't know about that. No, we're not too sure about.
So tell me this: you raised the interesting point there. So Southgate's mindset. I agree totally in everything you said. He's approached this tournament in a certain way, and right through the way, it has felt like a bit of a waste of the talent that he has at his disposal. But it's kind of worked. And so you're kind of sitting on your hands watching it saying, well, look, pragmatism, tournament football, maybe Garrett's onto something here. So we get to a point in the final where what's got them there is now undoing them. Their pragmatism, their conservatism. So I think, like, the Chiesa moment... It's really interesting to get into Southgate's head. I think he's looking at the first half saying, we've given them a lot of the ball towards the second half of that first half. They, are almost outside us the whole time. They don't want to put in crosses. They refuse to put in crosses. They had the Chiesa moment. Oh, that's a one-on-one. I'll back Declan Rice not to get done again like that. And we'll keep going here. We'll keep going here. It got worse in the second half. So again, he's getting to 55 minutes. Barella and Immobile off, Berardi, Cristante on. Like Mancini with the lesser bench is starting to freshen things up and move things around. I think Insigne comes into the middle a little bit.
Insigne went as a false nine.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, Verratti's dropping deeper. He's on the ball. Like, they're in total control of the ball, but they're still not tearing England open. And so we get to the hour mark, and then we get to 65 minutes, 2 minutes before the goal. I'm curious for your thoughts on Southgate's mindset on 65 minutes. So still, we're 2 minutes before the goal. It's coming, but also it's not like it's chance after chance. I think at that stage he's sitting on his hands thinking, oh, I can feel the finishing line. Like, if we just get through the next 15, the clock will become our friend. We slow it down. I don't think he panicked. I don't think he froze, which is what people are saying. I don't think he did nothing, because to do nothing is still to do something. I think he looked at it and still felt, we've got a decent chance here. And I don't think it was crazy for him to do that. I think it was wrong, but I don't think it was crazy.
No, it's not crazy, because...
Sorry, I'll rephrase it. How big an error was it? Crazy is the wrong way to put it.
Yeah.
I do think it was wrong, but I understand his mindset. So how much did he mess this up, I guess, is the point.
I think he messed it up quite spectacularly.
All right,
do.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is because he reacted with team selection, with the shape of the team, to what Italy were doing. So realistically, Italy, I looked at Italy play against Belgium early on in the tournament, and they were brilliant against the back three. They played really well. It was probably the best game in the knockout phase. Out of all the teams that they played, they were outplayed by Spain. Even the Czechs, they weren't great, but in the game against Belgium, they were brilliant. They were brilliant against the back three. Verratti was brilliant in that game. They had certain players that were causing Belgium problems, Insigne being one of them, and of course Spinazzola. So they missed Spinazzola, who's probably one of the outstanding players, if not the player of the tournament. But if you watch them in the semi, the relationship between Insigne and Emerson wasn't the same. Down the left-hand side, Italy were all over the place. Emerson, I thought, was very lucky to get a start in the final, and he actually played quite well after his first 15, 20 minutes. He played really well, actually, Emerson.
Yeah.
So I was surprised he started the game. So Southgate, to start the game, is reacting to what Italy have done. He's playing a back five, overcautious, I feel. I always feel in the way that Italy have played, if you looked at Italy, play against them with a back four, I think you're going to create more chances. I think you're going to create more problems for Italy. Playing against the back five, you're going to get an overload in the middle of the park. But what he did by playing the back five, he's tried to narrow everything up. So Sterling's dropping a little bit deeper with with Mount. Sorry, they're dropping a bit deeper to try to create a 4-on-3. But that wasn't really working, because as the game progressed, as I said, Verratti started to take control of the ball alongside Jorginho. Barella started to have a little bit of involvement in it as well. So it became a 3-on-2, because those two were pushed a little bit too high, and it didn't work anyway. So that was a reactive thing. Then, if you talk about the game, as you're saying there, the game's going on. So, yes, I know what you're saying. England look comfortable defensively. They're not peppering Pickford's goal.
Ish. It's not great, but ish. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't. But I think Southgate should have looked at that and said, look, we need somebody else on the pitch. We need to change something. At 60 minutes, even 55 minutes, as you say, like Mancini had made the substitution because he recognised they had to. Obviously, they're chasing it, but they had to get their way back into the game. So I'm watching that game. I'm thinking he needs to do something different here. He needs. You're looking at. I know you keep looking at Grealish, but Grealish is a player that's going to be able to hold on to the ball for England. He's a player that's going to be able to buy a foul. He's going to be able to, do certain things that England don't necessarily have. So if they bring him on, he's going to be your ideal player in this game. But he waited and waited and waited, and then, of course, Bonucci scores. Then he reacts by bringing Saka on, which I thought was a wrong substitution because he's not necessarily a player that's going to be clever enough like Grealish that's going to be able to hold off a player, buy a foul, kill the game, and he's also going to be so creative in the final third. He's probably England's best player, isn't he, Grealish? Yeah. So you're then chasing the game in a way. So I always felt that Southgate was reacting all the time to what opposition did, constantly doing that throughout. And then, of course, when Bonucci scored, he's bringing Saka on because he's thinking, I'm bringing a ball carrier on that's going to get us up the pitch. But he's 19 years of age, this kid. He's coming on to the biggest game of his life. And he froze. He didn't play well, Saka, throughout. And regardless of what happened with the penalty, but he didn't play well. No. And it was then difficult to change the mentality of that side from sitting deep. You're bringing players on to try and change it. And the only player that could change England's fortunes at that moment was Grealish, because he would do things different to what they had on the pitch. Yes. And I just feel as though that it's difficult to say, like he's bottled it or whatever it would be, because he's not doing that, because he's managed this tournament with a cautious approach, and that's what's cost England ultimately. It did cost them, because by reacting then after Bonucci got that equaliser, England then couldn't change the way that they played. Personnel coming into the game then throughout. Then Grealish comes on in injury time, where they started to have a little bit of control of it, but it was probably even beyond Grealish at that stage. So it just, I don't know, England throughout just didn't. And the manager, I felt, and the coaching staff as well that were around him that's advising Southgate, made the wrong decisions, I felt. And that's why England ultimately went to penalties and lost out in the end anyway. Yeah, no, you've argued that perfectly. I'm with you now. He is a disgrace, Southgate. He is. Shocking. Do you have a big problem with the Sancho-Rashford substitutions late on, like very late on, obviously? Because Southgate made the point, I mean, he's aware it's nicer to take a penalty when you're warmed up, but he did make the point that once I brought the two boys on, I was left with Stones, Maguire, Phillips and Shaw. That's four defensive players. Like, there's only so long, this is me talking now, not him, there's only so long you can have Rashford at right back, Yeah, it was. But he brought them on. If you notice, he brought them on at a corner. So he took Kyle Walker off. But he had to get them on then. Like, it was last chance saloon. I know it was. But why didn't he do it with 5 minutes to go then? Why did he leave till the 119th minute? He was trying to, and then the ball stayed in play for an inordinate amount of time. Like, I thought he was going to gesture to one of the English players to foul an Italian to stop the play. It wouldn't have made any difference there were 10 minutes to go, though, would it? Surely at that stage, and you've got the responsibility of Rashford as well, who's mature enough now to, have play that role to an extent. I don't know. I don't know. I saw John Stones having to explain to Rashford he has to take throw-ins as a right back. Maybe you're right. I don't know. But I think it was incredibly harsh on him. They come on, you're not fresh, and you're more or less your first kick of the ball, and you're taking a penalty in that moment. And again, he doesn't need to apologise. Rashford doesn't need to apologise. It happens. It's a burden that you carry with you. Every time I come on this bloody show, I carry the burden of missing a penalty. Every time that something comes up, there's a penalty shootout, or Kev, remember you missed against Spain or whatever. I know. Can I put on the record? It's a burden I've carried. Can I put on the record? Your penalty miss was discussed in the show production meeting at 2:30 today. I did not bring it up. I just want that on the record. I've not brought it up with you, and yet it was discussed earlier on as well. We got to ask Kev about. Yeah, but the pain. You spoke about it, though, didn't you, Joe? And I'm sure we cracked a few jokes. There were a few cruel jokes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. See, I can well imagine. You don't realise that I've carried this with me all my life, Joe. Genuinely, how much of a thing is it to carry around? You would have a sense of what those three fellas will carry around now. In the aftermath, 24 hours, 48 hours afterwards, you just want to go and lock yourself away in a cave, as far away from anybody. You just don't want to speak to anybody. You want to get away from anyone and any person that would come anywhere near you.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razor.